Chapter 2309. If you return to your hometown, what do you want to do the most? This was Griffith's question after Essex also jumped into the sinkhole. Perhaps it was because it was too quiet. This was a difficult question for Essex to answer. What did he want to do the most when he returned to Free Cities? Should he go fishing at the beach of the City of Freedom Academy and take a look at the young and beautiful Holy Maiden candidates? Or do they want to have a good fight on the streets? Or perhaps let the Rose Mansion reopen? Should he directly go to Calvin's house, hang up this rotten old man, and beat him up first? Essex suddenly felt that there were too many things he wanted to do with his freedom. He didn't even know what the first thing he would do would be. Can't think of anything? Griffith's voice rang out in the darkness. I've been away for too long. Essex shook his head, not caring if Griffith could see it or not. 15 years is a very short time for vampires. My previous life is only a dozen years more than 15 years, Essex said expressionlessly. I've already been a vampire for half of my life. Half a lifetime, in other words, was a very long time. Essex felt that his answer was quite good. He could probably get extra points for his essay. What about you? What do you want to do? He looked at Griffith. Do you have a dream, Griffith? I want to build a country. Country? Essex nodded. It's a good dream to become a king. Is that why you became a vampire? What's the problem? Griffith asked calmly. Essex shook his head. Nothing. I just remembered that Norsta mentioned you to me before, a long time ago. He said he met a child who was very beautiful and begged him to become a vampire. He said he would do anything. Griffith said indifferently, I'm willing to do anything now. But even if you become a vampire, you might not be able to become a king. Essex shook his head. There's no precedent, and you can't replace the true ancestor. But Griffith smiled and said, Count, any dream must be based on the premise of being alive. In the past, I had exhausted all my strength to live. This was not a very pleasant topic, so the two of them quickly fell silent. Only Arthaces was still thinking about how to strike up a conversation with Griffith, because he knew that only by distracting Griffith's attention would he be able to keep his mind occupied. If Griffith suddenly felt hungry and wanted to drink blood, and a cup of blood appeared out of nowhere, then he would not be able to explain himself. Putting aside the fact that he was currently very weak and might not even be able to deal with Griffith, just the idea that Griffith had proposed to deal with Cain was enough to move him immensely. Thus, Rose Countess began to shamelessly play with dolls. Why do you want to be king? You ask too many questions. How much longer until we arrive? We've arrived. We've arrived. Essex could not help but stop. With his superb eyesight, as long as there was a little light, he could roughly see in the darkness. At this time, everything around him was clearly imprinted in his vision. A hive, a huge hive, like a hive. But in these hives there were definitely not bees. Essex saw a huge head in one of the hives. It was a creature that looked like a giant lizard. At this time, it was lying lazily in the hole of the hive, looking at the intruders in the darkness. They're here. Griffith's face was solemn. Listen. Rustling sounds began to be heard, and the giant lizard creatures began to crawl out of each hive. Soon, the ground and the walls were covered with lizards, as if there was no end to them. They were everywhere in sight. Essex could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. The creatures in the earth's core were unusually dangerous. He was not sure if these giant lizards were as scary as the wolf-like creatures they had encountered before when they were alone, but this group of giant lizards was definitely many times more terrifying than a pack of wolves, because there were just too many of them. Let's go. Griffith did not waste any time. Having been here once, he knew how scary this giant lizard's hive was. He had successfully lured the giant lizards out and achieved his goal of walking into the sinkhole. Next, he had to lure these giant lizards out and attack the coral tree forest to deal with Cain. Essex nodded and immediately retreated, running faster than Griffith. After all, the foundation was there. Superior vampires were more powerful than middle vampires, not to mention that Griffith had only received the blood of a middle vampire. They were like delicious cakes, and the giant lizards in the hive were like a tidal wave that was devouring them. If they ran a little slower, they would be consigned to eternal damnation. Essex felt that this operation was still a little hasty. He did not expect there to be so many giant lizards. It was far beyond his imagination. Fortunately, they had reached the exit of the sinkhole. They just had to climb up. Not good! Griffith exclaimed in surprise. Essex looked up instinctively and saw that the vertical passage leading to the sinkhole was densely packed with giant lizards. They did not only live in the hive of the hive, they also lived on the rock walls, or rather, the entire sky was actually the hive of the giant lizards. Hold on tight to me. Essex gritted his teeth and the clothes on his back were instantly torn apart. Then, a pair of huge bat wings covered in mucus instantly spread out. The bat wings shook quickly twice and the mucus was instantly flung out. Griffith hesitated for a moment and directly grabbed Asash's arm. He looked at the bat wings on Asash's body with some envy. These were wings that only vampire nobles above the middle rank could grow, and he, after absorbing Nosta's bloodline, would soon grow wings. Soon, he would also have his own wings, just like an eagle. Those giant lizards did not jump like prey, so they directly launched an attack. A large number of giant lizards jumped out from the rock walls in an instant. Even though he could fly, facing the giant lizards that kept falling from the rock walls above, Asash's bat wings seemed to be a burden. His wings were quickly torn apart by the giant lizard's sharp claws. The bat wings were also a part of his body. Tearing them apart was equivalent to tearing his body apart. Essex was so uncomfortable that he could not speak. Sorry to offend you, Count. Griffith suddenly pulled out his weapon at this moment, stepped directly on Asash's back, and swung his sword at the attacking giant lizards. Count Rose wanted to say, "What a guy!" but he really could not say it. It was too painful. However, even though Griffith counterattacked, there were too many giant lizards falling down, and he did not climb up much. The distance to the exit was simply hopeless. Essex gritted his teeth and directly took out the myriad element, fruit. Between hiding the secret of myriad element from Griffith and escaping, he could only choose the latter at this moment. However, when the myriad element, fruit entered his hand, Essex felt a sense of emptiness. Not only the emptiness in his mind, but even his soul. Along the way, he had used the myriad element, fruit too many times. What are you going to do? Griffith obviously noticed. I'll tell you when we go up. Essex shouted, "Be careful above." A terrifying heat wave instantly fell from above. Above the sinkhole, streams of terrifying magma were pouring down along the rock walls. A large number of giant lizards were instantly washed away and drowned in the magma. Screams filled the vertical and long crater. Although Griffith did not know why magma suddenly appeared, he vaguely knew that it might have something to do with the crystal formed on the coral tree that Count Rose suddenly took out. But he did not think too much at this time because the exit was right in front of him. "We're going out," Essex shouted excitedly at this time. In an instant, a very fast shadow rushed out of the crater. The two suddenly had a feeling of surviving a disaster. Unfortunately, a large number of giant lizards were directly submerged by the magma, and they did not know how many could be lured out in the end. Griffith. Essex turned back at this time. He wanted to let this beautiful guy come down, but he couldn't keep riding on him. However, his body suddenly became much more relaxed. The moment he turned back, Griffith had already left his back and fell from his back. A bright red tongue had unknowingly wrapped around Griffith's waist. A tongue of inconceivable length suddenly shot out from the burning sinkhole and wrapped around Griffith's body, pulling him into the sinkhole once again. Griffith! Essex wanted to rescue him at this time. A pair of bat-like wings with countless wounds flapped wildly. He wanted to grab Griffith's hand, even if it was just a finger. Griffith! However, in the end, Essex was no faster than the speed of the tongue's retraction. He had already rushed to the entrance of the crater, but could only watch as Griffith completely fell into the abyss-like crater. The appearance of magma caused the decomposition of the rocks inside the crater to change. The land at the edge of the crater's entrance began to sink rapidly, and was filled up. Mr. Essex silently floated above the crater that had already been filled up. Perhaps, before going down, they did not think that this would be the result. Luring out the giant lizards in the nest and then dealing with Cain. They had thought in a very good direction, and even thought that this was a very simple thing. Shouldn't it be like this? Essex muttered to himself, it should be like this. This is such a simple thing. Why is it not going as planned? After a long while, Arthursus slowly let out a sigh of relief. Griffith, who had fallen into the crater, probably had no chance of surviving. The claws of those giant lizards were so sharp that even he had at least 100 wounds on his body right now. He looked helplessly in the direction of the Grand Canyon. How else could he deal with Cain? At that moment it felt as if he had directly fallen from heaven to hell. Griffith had never seen heaven, even if it was something similar. But he knew what hell was like. Just like now, hell could make people go down. In fact, he had already gone through quite well. He had gone against the source of his bloodline, and became the source of his bloodline. Not long after, he would be able to become a real middle level. He would have a pair of wings that belonged to him. He tried to reach out to Countess Rose, but in the end, he did not reach out. Does he want to save me? This is really strange. He probably doesn't know that he was the one who killed Norsta. At this moment, Griffith was calmer than ever. Perhaps it was because this great rise and fall came too suddenly that he was unable to make the right response. It was not until the feeling of being bitten spread throughout his entire body that Griffith felt a trace of sensation. The giant lizards were devouring his body, but Griffith subconsciously felt that what these giant lizards really wanted to eat was not his flesh and blood, but something else. They were looking for something, and devouring flesh and blood was just a kind of instinct that came along in passing. More and more giant lizards came rushing over. If there was someone here, they would see that the unbelievably beautiful man was now only left with his beautiful face. His entire body had been completely covered by the giant lizards that were crowding over. It was as if he was floating in a black ocean. Another world. He really wanted to see a society where people lived elegantly without the war. It should be easier to establish a country in that kind of place than here. In the end, only his face was left, slowly sinking into the sea of giant lizards. Suddenly, a hand that only had bones left trembled as it reached out from the sea of giant lizards. In the palm of this hand that only had a little bit of flesh and blood left was a pair of exquisite earrings. However, the trembling arm finally broke and fell down. In the end, even the bones were gnawed off, leaving nothing behind. Griffith seemed to have been completely devoured. The amount was too little, and the giant lizards seemed to be dissatisfied, but no matter how dissatisfied they were, there was no food left. The giant lizards at the outermost layer began to retreat reluctantly. The crowded sea of giant lizards began to slowly disperse. They ate crazily. The giant lizards that were squeezed in the innermost layer were even bitten by their companions, leaving many wounds. Suddenly, a bloody arm that seemed to have been peeled off stretched out from a group of giant lizards like a small mountain, grabbed a giant lizard that was about to leave, and directly retracted. Bang! In the process of retracting, the body of the giant lizard that was caught directly exploded. The exploded flesh and blood didn't splash out, instead, it seemed to be pulled by something. It was a thing that seemed to have been minced but not completely minced, and the flesh and bones were randomly squeezed together. The giant lizards at the periphery began to retreat at this time. Perhaps they felt some danger. However, everything was lifted out. At this time, it was crazily expanding, and as if it had a strange magic, it made the giant lizards that had escaped come back again. The bodies of the giant lizards exploded one by one, and everything was used to add to this terrifying mountain of flesh and blood. The flowing magma was finally covered with a layer of black solidified matter, and the temperature was still very high. In the nest, no giant lizard could be seen anymore. There was only a tall, thin, and almost perfect black body left here. Bang! The back of the black body suddenly split open like a blooming flower, and then, it had a pair of black and ferocious wings. At the same time, 7 dim crystals suddenly fell to the ground, and then directly shattered. It took a step forward, and picked up a pair of delicate earrings on the ground. Chapter 23:10. This was a completely different feeling. A brand new body, brand new power, and a brand new perception of the entire world. It was wonderful, but it felt like it was not enough. Not enough. It simply felt like it was not enough. It needed more, something that it craved instinctively. It spread its ferocious wings and instantly rushed out of the crater. Once again, it returned to the surface. In the dense forest, it opened its arms to its heart's content. Something was approaching it. It was a multi-jointed reptile that looked like a centipede. However, its back had spikes that looked like sharp blades. It slowly crawled over and finally crawled to the bottom of its feet. Then, it followed its body and wrapped itself around it. A strange scene happened. This terrifying reptile's body seemed to melt in an instant. It actually sank into its body. Not enough. It opened its mouth, and a demon-like song began to sound. At that moment, all the things hidden in the forest seemed to be summoned by something. It started walking. As it walked, it sang like a demon's whisper. One by one, strange creatures began to disappear into its body. It walked towards the canyon. There, it desired something there. The lens of the binoculars turned from the injured to Pope Elohim, who was lying on the ground. Then, it quickly turned back to the injured, Isabel and the others. However, at this moment, the camera suddenly rewound and returned to Elohim. Senior, that old man seems to be waking up. Then, her binoculars, which was her arm, was taken away by Madanzo. Elohim had indeed woken up. His life had been extended because of Cain, but this extension was not what he wanted. Cain had not just appeared beside Pope Elohim. If he really wanted to extend his life, he could have done so at any time when he was in Laputa. I have fallen into darkness. After waking up, Elohim was rather calm. His white hair turned gray and his loose skin started to tighten. It was as if he had suddenly become 10 years younger. I had no choice, Elohim. You were about to die. Cain's expression was calm, but there was a hint of apology in his voice. I'm not blaming you, Cain. Pope Elohim shook his head. His body was getting better and he could now stand up easily. It's true. For example, the feeling of being able to walk freely again is great. Cain could not help but frown. Elohim's condition seemed a little different. I'm too stubborn. Pope Elohim's voice seemed to have a strange penetrating power. I didn't know that the feeling of being reborn was so wonderful. This makes me feel how foolish my persistence in the past was. I've wasted a lot of time. Elohim, what are you doing? Cain was shocked. A strange smile appeared on Pope Elohim's face. He was becoming younger. 10 years old, 20 years old, 30 years old. In the blink of an eye, Pope Elohim had turned into a handsome young man. He looked at his hands that were full of vitality and chuckled. That's great. Say, Senior? In the distance, Nan Xiaonan suddenly took a deep breath. Then, she stared at Madanzo in disbelief. Pope Elohim had become too young. However, the young Elohim had almost the same appearance as Madanzo. The two of them seemed to be the same person. No, strictly speaking, Madanzo had always appeared as an 11 or 12-year-old boy, while Pope Elohim, who had regained his youthful appearance, appeared to be 17 or 18 years old. However, both of them appeared to be children and youths. Madanzo's face was gloomy. She did not react to Nan Xiaonan's shock. You're not Elohim's illegitimate son, are you? Lady Nan asked tentatively. King want to slap you right now, Madanzo replied expressionlessly. But she had mixed feelings. No one had ever seen Elohim when he was young. Perhaps this was the only chance in the past recorded in the Book of Gaia. Then, does the Master of Heaven, he have children? Yes, the entire heaven is his child. He felt his young body and his spirit was unprecedentedly good. It was as if he had been reborn. I didn't expect Cain's bloodline to be so powerful. Not far away, Isabel, who had witnessed the whole process, suddenly sneered. Elohim, in the end, you still turned into the thing you hate the most, a beast. The young pope looked at her indifferently. Isabel chuckled. Beast. Do you still remember? That's how you called vampires. All along. The young pope walked over slowly. He picked up a essence, fruit from the ground and held it in his palm. He had already arrived in front of Isabel. At the same time, a slender silver sword appeared in Elohim's hand. At this moment Cain's gaze changed. His pupils instantly contracted. Isabel was even more shocked. She was not shocked by the threat of the sword, but by the fact that Elohim had used the essence, fruit's ability. The young pope calmly pierced the sword in his hand into Isabel's chest. Bit by bit, as if he was torturing her. Isabel screamed in agony. At this moment, the crippled Nero clenched her teeth and used all her strength to charge at Elohim. But she was kicked away by Elohim. The sword slowly pierced through Isabel's chest. She fell to the ground. Her body kept twitching. Tears, saliva, and snot came out of her nose. I don't need to continue adhering to the insignificant faith of the past. The young pope looked at Isabel coldly and said, Stand up, cursed witch. I always knew that you were hiding something. Isabel did not seem to hear him. Her eyes were blank as if she had lost consciousness. Elohim sneered and raised his sword again. This time, he planned to cut off Isabel's head. He swung. A strong hand grabbed Elohim's wrist. It was the strongest hybrid, Cain. Cain, what are you doing? The young pope was not angry. Instead, he looked at Cain with a smile. Are you sympathizing with this woman? Or do you like this kind of appearance? I can give you as much as you want. I'm not interested in her. But I know, once you kill her, you can never come back. What's wrong with me now? The young pope narrowed his eyes. Cain said in a low voice, You've used infinite essence. You've given up on your persistence. Elohim, have you forgotten how much pain you've suffered in order to deny infinite essence? Yes, I've suffered a lot. The young pope smiled strangely. But in the end, I realized that there's nothing wrong with the infinite essence. Why should I deny it? Have you forgotten your dream? Cain was furious. The young pope shook his head. I haven't forgotten, but I've accomplished it. The former Elohim had seen his ultimate dream. He felt love and compassion, and in that instant, he had completed his faith. So, he left happily. Cain could not help but be moved. The young pope reached out and touched Cain's resolute face. He laughed softly. He left, but I'm here. I'll be a new Elohim. A Elohim who can satisfy all of your desires. Cain, my child. You have a twisted love for me, don't you? Guy's breathing suddenly quickened. The young pope's smile became more and more demonic. His eyes were as bright as the stars. Since you were 10 years old, you've been torturing yourself madly. You've been using training methods that other mixed bloods do not dare to use 10 times, 20 times. Why? Cain's lips trembled. This strongest mixed blood actually showed an unprecedented panic at this moment. In order to suppress that twisted and perverted love in your heart. Poof! The strongest mixed blood fell to the ground instantly. At this moment, the young pope gently cupped his face. In Cain's eyes, those young and lustrous lips were like blooming roses, slowly approaching him. I give you my love. Father, the rose had thorns. Its fangs gently pierced Cain's body and devoured all the nutrients in a frenzy, until the strongest life was completely lost. There were only a few gazes of disbelief left. They could not think as they watched this scene unfold. Cain, the strongest mixed blood, fell just like that. Cain. Nero's face showed a hint of pain. He was also one of the mixed bloods. They received training together and successfully walked out of the hellish training room in the same bat. The difference was that he was taken away by Isabel, while Cain followed the new pope, Elohim. Their paths had unknowingly become completely different. He saw the strange smile on Cain's face before he died. He could not help but look at Isabel. He did not know if he would be the same as Cain when he died in Isabel's hands one day. At this moment, the young pope gently wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He opened his hands, raised his head, and closed his eyes. As if he was feeling his new life, he slowly turned and jumped. Ah, it's so wonderful! This is the hymn of life, he laughed wantonly. In the crown of a coral tree in the distance, Lady Nan could no longer speak. She felt that she was really disturbed again. She did not want to look at men. Madanzo, who was next door, was already livid. She was probably traumatized by this. Something's coming. Madanzo suddenly frowned and looked back at the entrance of the coral tree forest. At the entrance, a terrifying black gas suddenly rushed out. The black gas instantly dyed the glowing coral tree forest gray. At the same time, a figure with huge and ferocious wings broke into the coral tree forest at an extremely fast speed. This is... Nan Xiaonan could not help but open her mouth and say subconsciously, "It seems to be... Griffith? How did he become like this? Look at his abdomen." Madanzo took a deep breath. It saw the round hole that it was so familiar with. It was like the arrival of a demon king. Endless black gas that exuded a desperate and violent aura erupted into the coral tree forest in an instant. The huge black gas carried a terrifying impact, overturning the ground and blowing down the coral trees. The young pope's enjoyment of the hymn of life was interrupted, and a hint of displeasure appeared on his face. He looked up and saw a pair of ferocious wings slowly fluttering in the sky, descending. The young pope frowned. The person who came looked like a vampire, but vampires would never emit such a terrifying and strange aura. This was more like the violent special monsters that were everywhere in the Earth's core. He saw the round hole that belonged to the special monster. It landed on the ground and slowly turned its eyes, as if it was sizing up and looking for something. Finally, its eyes fell on the young pope. Elohim could feel a sense of unfamiliarity from the other's eyes. It was a sense of unfamiliarity to him. However, the young pope was in a better state than ever before. He was also filled with confidence like never before. It was a sense of absolute dominance, as if everything was in his hands. The young pope opened his mouth and spoke with an extremely loving tone. "Tell me your name. I can feel the chaos and fear in your heart." It tilted its head and continued sizing up the young pope without saying a word. Elohim smiled and opened his hands. "I'm not afraid." It suddenly spoke. "I don't have a name either." The young pope smiled and said, "I'll give you a new name." "No need." It suddenly shook its head. "I've already thought about what I should be called." "What's your name?" the young pope asked. "Fairmont." "Fairmont." The young pope pondered for a moment. But at that moment, his eyes could not help but focus. He saw it, Fairmont, directly stretching out its arm. Simply raising his arm wasn't frightening. What was frightening was that Fairmont's arm suddenly split into countless huge tentacles at this moment, twisting into a frightening object like a fried dough twist. Expand, 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 expand. The terrifying arm instantly pushed the entire coral forest into a terrifying deep pit. At that moment, the young pope's body had already sunk into those twisting tentacles. "You look like you're very tasty." Like a demon king, it let out a low and horrifying laugh at this moment. End of chapter. Chapter 23:11. The arm was like countless cables entangled with each other, and each cable seemed to be alive. At this moment, the young pope was deeply trapped in it and could not break free. "What the hell is this?" The young pope was shocked. The species in front of him had completely exceeded his understanding. He was not the only one who was swallowed by this terrible arm. Not far away, Isabel, Nero, and Marianne were also in the same situation as the young pope. However, at this moment, in the direction where Fairmont extended, this terrible arm seemed to have broken something. Countless cracks appeared in the air. It can actually destroy space? That's impossible. On the top of the coral tree, Lady Nan screamed and looked at the broken places in disbelief. "No, it's not space, that's a mirror." Madanzo frowned at this time. "This is a mirror. It's like a mirror stuck in the middle of the coral forest. Part of the forest we see is just a reflection." With Madanzo's deduction, the truth quickly emerged. The cracks in the air spread, and finally, as if something was broken, countless sparkling fragments fell, and then a huge, towering coral tree appeared directly in front of everyone's eyes. "So, this is the method you used." At this time, the young pope could not help but be startled. It turned out that the mother coral tree had been so close to them all this time. However, it was all because of a mirror. No, this was not an ordinary mirror. This was a mirror created by the essence, fruit. It completely fit the light of the coral tree forest, and was a mirror that perfectly emitted a mirror image. The young pope believed that this method must have been done by Isabel. However, at this time, thinking about this point was of no help to the current situation. Whether it was him, Isabel, or Asaix, both sides were directly knocked down by the terrible power of Fairmont, who suddenly descended like a demon king. At this time, seeing that everyone was about to completely sink into Fairmont's huge arm, Nan Shunan gritted her teeth and said, "Are you really not going to do anything?" Madanzo said that they should not interfere with everything. The best way was to do nothing and let the original ending be the most ideal situation. However, this was simply impossible. She didn't know how Griffith had suddenly become Fairmont, but one thing was certain, and that was that Griffith had been tricked by her and Madanzo into entering the Earth's core. "Wait a little longer," Madanzo said calmly. Was it really calm? Lady Nan glanced at his hand that was gripping the holy light sword so tightly that his fingers had turned white. "I don't care," Lady Nan said in a huff. "I won't take the blame for this." Because the mirror image was broken and the mother coral tree reappeared, it immediately attracted Fairmont's attention. To it, the huge coral tree in front of it exuded a mysterious aura. Energy kept flowing through the cracks in the ground, and was absorbed into the coral mother tree. At this time, two pale-faced figures were standing below the coral mother tree. Lily, and the owner of the dungeon in the City of God's Protection, Alan. These two people never appeared when they were fighting against Cain and the Pope, but they were hiding behind the mirror images. This was a form of protection for Lily and Alan. However, Cain fell and left the scene in an unexpected way, but Fairmont also appeared and entered the scene in an unexpected way. Fairmont had an innate possessiveness towards living people, living souls. At this time, it had already discovered Lily and Alan under the tree, and it stretched out its other arm. Mr. Allen had already seen how terrifying the arm of this devil-like fellow was when he was hiding behind the mirror image. When the arm rushed over, Allen almost didn't think and pushed Lily aside. However, two tentacles suddenly shot out from the huge arm that flew past, and directly rolled towards Lily and Allen, grabbing both of them at the same time. Oh no! The two of them struggled in fear, but it was useless. The tentacles had already pulled them into the arm, and it was the end of Isabel and the others. In a moment of desperation, a figure quickly appeared. Like a big bird, it flashed past Lily and Alan's eyes. The two of them only felt that the tentacles that were wrapped around them seemed to have been cut by something. Their bodies loosened and naturally fell down. The big bird-like figure quickly circled in the sky and swooped down again, catching Lily and Alan, and then rushed into the sky again. Boss! Lord Earl! The big bird-like figure was Rose Countess, Essex, who had a pair of broken bat wings and a miserable face. At this time, Mr. Essex held one in each hand and stabilized in the sky, but he smiled bitterly and said, "I didn't leave for long. I feel like I missed the whole script." Boss, that Cain is dead, killed by Pope Elohim, and Elohim became a vampire, Lily quickly said. Essex frowned, and his eyes flashed past the other huge arm, and saw the few figures that were about to be swallowed, and his face suddenly turned ugly. But when he saw the source of the arm, the moment he saw Fairmont, he was even more shocked. "Griffith? You didn't die?" When Essex appeared, Fairmont already knew. At this time, it looked at Essex as if it was thinking about something. "Rose Countess, I won't kill you, don't worry, I still need you to help me open the door to another world." Mr. Essex couldn't stand it back then. This guy, why is he still thinking about this? Where is he going to get a door to another world? "Griffith, I'm sorry, I couldn't save you at that time." Mr. Essex took a deep breath, trying to ease the atmosphere. "It's okay, I'm better now." It shook its head and said indifferently, "By the way, I'm now called Fairmont." "Griffith, that's the past." "Fairmont? Fairmont?" Essex froze, and then he nodded and said, "Okay, Fairmont, I can agree to all your requests, but can you let Isabel and the others go? They're all my friends." "No." "Why?" "My body tells me that I need to eat them," Fairmont said slowly, "but don't worry, I'll restrain my appetite for you for now. This guy is abnormal. Not only has it changed greatly, but its brain is also abnormal." Right at this moment, there was indeed an earthquake coming from outside the coral thicket. The entrance to the coral thicket in the Grand Canyon seemed to have been smashed apart by something. Roar dash! With a loud roar, a chimpanzee-like creature that was over 30 meters tall, covered in black fur, covered in iron armor, and with 2 giant horns on its head, rushed into the cave. Behind this huge black gorilla, there were countless strange creatures following closely behind it. Among these creatures, Cleely even saw the wolf-type monsters that had attacked them in the beginning. "Sir, what's this?" Essex smiled bitterly and said, "They're all coming for me, what?" Mr. Allen exclaimed in surprise. Essex felt a headache coming on. He and Griffith, who was now Fairmont, went to the nest of the giant lizards with the intention of attracting all the giant lizards to deal with Cain, but he didn't expect that Griffith would be buried in the crater. Essex didn't lose heart. Instead, he cheered up. Without the giant lizards in the crater, there were still many dangerous creatures in the Earth's core. He made up his mind and started to provoke the strange creatures in the Earth's core as if he didn't care about his life. Originally, he only planned to get a few dozen or 100 of them to create chaos so that he could save people. However, he didn't expect that after he accidentally threw the black gorilla, the gorilla would raise its head and roar a few times, attracting almost all the strange creatures in the vicinity. The black gorilla seemed to have gone berserk and chased after him all the way. Right at this moment, the black gorilla that was still outside the coral forest suddenly jumped into the center of the forest. At this moment, this black gorilla didn't care about Arthashis. Instead, it was madly pounding its chest towards Fairmont, letting out waves of furious roars. After roaring, the black gorilla put its hands together and pounded at Fairmont. Fairmont frowned, retracted an arm that had turned into a huge tentacle, and blocked the gorilla's hanging fist. Fairmont's body instantly sank, and the ground cracked crazily. It was actually directly hammered into the ground by the black gorilla. The huge arm that swallowed Isabel and the others instantly lost its vitality. A long tentacle that spanned the entire forest fell to the ground, motionless. This black gorilla was too careless. Roar! The black gorilla pounded its chest again and roared at the sky. The strange creatures that had rushed into the forest became manic and trampled on this strange coral forest wantonly. At this moment, Lady Nan and Madanzo could no longer hide in the coral treetop. Madanzo gritted her teeth and plucked a few all-essence fruits from the branches of the treetop to create 2 jet backpacks. She carried one and threw the other to Nan Xiaonan. The 2 instantly activated the jet backpacks and rushed into the air. They looked down and saw that the entire coral forest had been swept into dust as if it had fallen. At this moment, black tentacles, like rapidly growing tree trunks, broke out of the ground and rushed into the sky. These tentacles rolled up the strange creatures in the forest and dragged them into the ground. Even the extremely careless black gorilla was completely entangled by dozens of huge tentacles. The black gorilla struggled crazily as if it had gone mad. At this moment, a black shadow slowly rose from the big pit it had punched out. It was Fairmont. At this moment, Fairmont's lower body was like a tree trunk spiraling into the ground. The thick roots were contracting and expanding, and nutrient-like bulges quickly flowed into Fairmont's body. At the same time, the strange creatures rolled up by the black tentacles were rapidly dying, being devoured. Roar! The black gorilla wasn't willing to be swallowed just like that. Its wild nature was activated to the extreme. Under the entanglement of dozens of huge tentacles, it forcibly stretched out its arms. Its huge palms directly grabbed Fairmont at this time, as if it wanted to directly incapacitate Fairmont. Fairmont wasn't afraid at all. The black gorilla's body was being rapidly absorbed by the tentacles. The black gorilla's strength was decreasing rapidly. No matter how unwilling you are, you'll become a part of me eventually. Fairmont said in a low voice, "Become a part of me. Become my strength. Together with me, we will create a brand new country." Roar! The unyielding roar sounded again. However, a tentacle like a huge spear instantly rushed out from the ground and pierced the black gorilla's body. The devouring speed of the black gorilla was even faster. Fairmont enjoyed the feeling of his strength increasing again. "I'm sorry I couldn't save you last time." A voice with a heavy heart suddenly sounded behind Fairmont. "I have to kill you now. I'm sorry again." It was Asash's voice. A long sword. Countess Rose flew over at high speed and stabbed the back of Fairmont's head with all her strength. But the moment the long sword stabbed the back of Fairmont's head, it shattered. Arthashis felt a chill in his heart. This guy's body was actually this tough? This sword was already the strongest alloy material created with 10,000 elements, in his knowledge. The moment the long sword shattered, Fairmont suddenly struggled and broke free from the black gorilla's palm. Then he waved his arm and swept Asakes down. The moment he landed, a deep pit of several meters was blasted out. In the deep pit, as a superior vampire, Asash's bones were shattered, his blood vessels burst, and he no longer had any strength. Fairmont's body began to extend. His lower body was still planted in the ground, but his upper body was already in front of Asakes. "It doesn't matter if you don't want to cooperate with me. As long as I eat you, I can get everything from you." Fairmont slowly stretched out his hand. "You can also become a part of me, Asakes." Looking at the slowly extended arm, Asakes lifted his finger with difficulty, but immediately fell down. Or at this time, he didn't even have the strength to lift his finger. "Don't get close to my boss." The girl jumped down from above, her face pale. Her body was trembling, but her eyes were unusually firm. She used all her strength to hit Fairmont with the weapon in her hand. A broom. Like a child's play, the attack directly hit Fairmont's body, but naturally it had no effect. Fairmont, who was 2 heads taller than K4-head Lily, just looked down at this time. K4-head Lily met Fairmont's eyes. She was horrified and quickly let go of the broom, retreating. She hurriedly took out a essence fruit, and a black pistol appeared in her hand. She directly shot out bullet. The crazy bullets couldn't hit Fairmont's sturdy body. Fairmont just moved his mind, and a tentacle directly swept K's forehead Lily away. Insignificant power. Fairmont stretched out his hand, and a tentacle directly rolled up Asake's and sent him to his front. At this time, although he also wanted to eat this overconfident girl, Asake's was more attractive. Because he needed Asash's secret. Boss! The girl screamed desperately with tears in her eyes. Don't! I can't wait any longer. I don't care if others die, but Asake's can't die. If he dies, I can't explain it to Miss Yu Yi. Lady Nan couldn't stay still at this time. She raised her arm, and the muzzle on the vambrace had been adjusted to the maximum power. This thing was created with an entire essence fruit. Except for the absence of Xing Chuang's life, its power was not weakened. Although Fairmont's power was too terrifying at this time, he should still be able to blast it open. Unexpectedly, Madanzo stopped her with one hand. Wait! Wait my ass! Lady Nan scolded loudly. Madanzo directly pointed forward, and a light beam shot up from the deep pit to the sky. In this light beam, a huge figure slowly emerged. Suddenly, a huge mechanical arm directly stretched out from the light beam, grasping Asake's and forcibly breaking Fairmont's tentacle. F***CK. Isn't it? God Eater. Song Lei. Madanzo slowly sighed at this time, smiling bitterly. I'm afraid that K or Lily created it with essence. It's really a miraculous operation. Nan Xiaonan immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. K or Lily, she was a real pilot of Song Lei, who had received formal training. It was really too easy for her to imagine all of Song Lei. At this time, the huge body was holding Asake's, who was seriously injured with both hands. It was also roaring. In the cockpit, the girl fainted in the seat, and her eyes slowly closed. The floor of the cockpit was covered with a layer of dim crystals. There were more than 100 essence fruits here. Don't hurt him, Mr. Asake's. The armor on the back of the huge body suddenly exploded, and then a pair of bloody wings opened instantly. Roar! Chapter 23:12. The moment Song Lei appeared, Nan Xiaonan and Madanzo seemed to be pulled back to the world of the pilot school. The familiar yet strange scene in front of them made the two guys who relied on backpacks to stay in the air feel unreal. This is not the normal form of Song Lei. This should be the Song Lei that Calvin installed with the new system later on. This was what really surprised Nan Xiaonan. That was because Song Lei, which had been installed with the new system, was a super mech that could withstand the behemoth of Doomsday. Even if it did not last long, Song Lei's combat ability was truly formidable. However, she somewhat understood the current situation of Fairmont. After all, not only did it devour so many strange species, but it also did not let go of the huge black gorilla. At this moment, under the push of the blood-colored flesh wings, Song Lei directly pounced towards Fairmont like a wild beast. Under the savage attack of Song Lei, Fairmont's arms once again enlarged. This was a strange battle. However, at this time, Madanzo disappeared. Nan Xiaonan quickly looked for Madanzo and saw that Madanzo had rushed to the huge coral mother tree. It is. Lady Nan frowned, and then her eyes were slightly startled. In front of Madanzo, the young Pope Elohim took advantage of the chaos and quietly entered the coral mother tree. Not only that, the young Pope was even carrying a huge coffin at this time. At the same time, there was a third party at this time quietly sneaking into the coral mother tree. It was Isabel and Nero who were supporting each other and stumbling. Perhaps Arthashes had already prepared himself for death. When he was taken back by the huge battle machine, he still could not react. He had seen the experiences that K. Lily had written down. It was a world with Apostle, God-Eater, and Pilot School. In an instant, the experiences that K. Lily had written down overlapped with the huge body that he was currently seeing. This is the blue thunder that K. Lily mentioned? The physique of a superior vampire was incomparably strong. Without continuous attacks, even in a state of near death, the body would slowly recover. Although he was still unable to recover his combat power, Arthas was able to stand up with difficulty. At this moment, Atsong-Lei's hand moved and stuffed Arthas directly into the cockpit. In the cockpit, the moment the girl closed her eyes, she had already activated the autopilot program of Atsong-Lei. At this time, putting Asakes into the cockpit was the autopilot program's self-judgment. On one hand, it was to protect Asake. On the other hand, it was to free up his hands, which would make it easier for him to fight. Through the screen, Arthashis could clearly see how berserk the battle style of this colossal mech was. This was simply a colossal, bloodthirsty beast. The violent shaking made Asakes unable to maintain his balance even in the cockpit. He instantly bumped into Lily, but the girl didn't react at all. Arthas's heart couldn't help but sink. He stepped forward, and with a vampire's keen perception of life, he could clearly feel that the body in front of him, which should have been full of vitality, was slowly dying. The bottom of the cockpit was densely covered with a layer of myriad element fruits that had been depleted of energy. In an instant, Asakes knew how Atsong-Lei appeared. No. It shouldn't be like this. Asakes subconsciously hugged Lily's body and lost his mind. This is wrong. I won't let you die. Since the girl was born, she had always been in his eyes. He watched her grow up little by little. The relationship between the two was not blood relatives, but it was far beyond that. I'm sorry, Asash's face was pale. He knew he couldn't hesitate. Hesitation would only cause the life in his arms to be completely exhausted in the next moment. The blood-sucking fangs instantly pierced the girl's neck. He didn't know if giving the girl blood at this time could save her. The Voal essence. Fruit devoured the spirit and will, and the power of blood could only revive the dying body. He could only gamble. It was like a blank world. There was nothing, just like a piece of white paper. Suddenly, there were a few simple lines on the white paper, outlining a simple figure. It was a figure sitting on the ground dejectedly. A few wisps of lines were faintly discernible, like a primitive two-dimensional painting. Asakes, who, at the beginning, the same simple lines slowly formed another plain figure, slowly walking towards him. Asakes, she called his name. He tried hard to see clearly, but the paper-like time began to wrinkle at this moment, and a powerful force threw his body away. The calls became more and more distant. In the end, he tried hard to see her clearly until the paper-like painting world suddenly broke. He woke up in the endless darkness. Sage! Boss! Boss! Suddenly, the girl's voice woke him up. Asakes suddenly quivered, and Forehead Lily's familiar face came into his sight. She woke up. At the same time, a weak warmth slowly flowed in the holy glory on his body. At this time, Asakes was surprised to find that the whole cockpit was filled with a strange light. It's Atsong-Lei, Forehead Lily said quickly. I think we've reached the unprecedented synchronization rate of Atsong-Lei. I've driven Atsong-Lei before, but I've never achieved such a synchronization rate. Synchronization rate? 500%. No one has ever achieved it. Asakes didn't understand the meaning, but Forehead Lily didn't give him more time to digest. Instead, she took a deep breath. Mr. Asakes, hold me tight. I'm going. However, there was only a small space in the cockpit, so the girl had no choice but to lean forward, bending down as if she was riding a motorcycle. Asakes instantly sat behind the girl. In his opinion, this was a terrible posture. Asakes, who had been Rose Countess for more than 10 years, couldn't help but gulp. Then, a terrifying acceleration made Asash's body stick to the seat instantly. He looked at the 180-degree view of the screen, and the sky of the Earth's core appeared in front of him. The girl riding in front of him seemed to have a pair of white wings on her back. Light. Fly. Forehead Lily. Flying in the sky, the blood-red wings of the huge blue machine instantly turned into a dazzling light. It had turned into a pair of pure white wings. The light pierced through the darkness. In the darkness, Fairmont's body seemed to be burned by flames. Its body kept shaking, as if it was longing for something. Giant lizards, gorillas, all the species in the Earth's core. It wanted to devour Rose Countess and the girl, but now, in the light, it seemed to have something it instinctively wanted. So beautiful, this world was too bad. Resources were exhausted, monsters were rampant, and the nightmarish vampires once again swept the earth. In the end, humans could only be trapped in a small pure land. However, even in the last pure land, class, exploitation, and desire still existed. It was even more serious than on the earth. Those were some people who had completely lost their faith. The human elites on Laputa had even lost the courage to take back the earth. They wanted to change this situation. Humans needed salvation. Any great idea couldn't appear in an instant. The birth of a great belief required the most thorough understanding of oneself. The negation of infinite element was merely a product of Elohim's self-belief process, and he did it. Under the illumination of the light of penance, Elohim finally saw the ideal and perfect light of faith. It was so perfect that the moment he felt the light of faith, Elohim's spirit directly surpassed his original self, to the point that his original self could no longer contain the spirit that had completed its sublimation. I don't need this completely idealized version of myself. The young Pope's gaze was unbridled and evil. He felt that only now did life have meaning. Without all restraints, he was free. Fairmont, who descended like a demon, was nothing. That terrifying battle machine was nothing. As long as he could obtain the mature mother ore, he would have the ability to rebuild the world. Before Elohim completed his sublimation, he wanted to obtain the mother ore. By completely negating the mother ore, he wanted to negate all of the infinite element's abilities and return the world's origin that was absorbed by the mother ore to the world. But now, the young Pope wanted to do the exact opposite. He acknowledged the mother ore's ability. He wanted to use the mother ore to create a new world that completely met his needs. The interior of the mother coral tree was spacious, but it wasn't endless. The young Pope had already arrived at the core of the mother tree. Here, the energy that flowed from the earth turned into a pure blue pool. The cold blue light reflected in the surroundings. In the center of the pool, there was a huge flower that was about to bloom. There was a huge piece of crystal embedded in it. The young Pope's eyes flashed with a hint of fanaticism. He let out a strange laugh and actually pushed the coffin directly into the pool. Soon, it will be done very soon. All of a sudden, the sound of a gunshot rang out. The bullet directly struck the young Pope's palm, forcibly breaking off 2 of his fingers. The young Pope screamed in agony. The power of the mithril began to madly corrode his newly reborn body as a vampire. He wasn't Cain. He didn't have Cain's terrifying perception of mithril, which was formed through years of training. Only 2 of his fingers were broken, but his entire palm had already begun to burn. In the blink of an eye, his palm was gone. He had no choice but to pull out his wrist directly. Another miserable scream rang out. In another direction, Isabel leaned on Nero's body, her arm trembling slightly. She was holding a black pistol in her hand. Consider yourself lucky. But the next shot. Isabel aimed again. At this time, her arm couldn't stop trembling, but she couldn't really aim at the young Pope's fatal spot. Isabel! The young Pope shouted at this moment, I will share this world with you. Elohim, are you kidding me? If I kill you, I won't even have to share anything, I will get everything. Another shot was fired, and the bullet directly pierced through the young Pope's shoulder. It almost hit his heart. The young Pope fell into the pool. This time, he had no choice but to pull out his arm. It was painful and embarrassing. He stared at Isabel and suddenly sneered. Do you think you know everything from Cicero? Isabel frowned and said calmly, What do you want to say? The young Pope said with a creepy smile. 15 years ago, the true ancestor invaded the blessed city. Do you think no one knows what you did? Isabel couldn't help but narrow her eyes. It was an extremely chaotic night. Many elites of the Holy See died, and the most powerful vampire hunter, D, went out to fight. However, in the depths of the Holy See's headquarters, a horrifying force exploded, and almost half of the blessed church as headquarters was destroyed in an instant. It was Cicero who taught you how to stab D with a sword, right? The young Pope's voice slowly sounded. Isabel directly fired a shot, and this shot directly hit the opponent's thigh. This time, the young Pope gritted his teeth and didn't tear his thigh apart. Instead, he screamed, Cicero taught you how to temporarily take away D's power. Do you think Elohim didn't know? From the moment you stepped into the new Holy See, Elohim knew what you were. Do you know why he kept you and let you reach such a high position? Isabel took a deep breath and said faintly, because the former Elohim was an elder worthy of respect. He truly loved all humans. Elohim only loved himself. The young Pope shouted halfway, he was selfish, so selfish that he wanted to deny my existence. He kept you just to ensure that D was still alive. Because Elohim knew that once D really died, the power you temporarily took away from me D would also disappear. Ah, do you think you are blessed by fate? Wrong. Isabel, from the moment you took away Gdia's curse because of your greed, you were already deeply trapped. All of this was just to let you come here smoothly. Nonsense. Isabel sneered and aimed with her trembling arm again. But this time, Nye landed behind her and reached out to support her, stabilizing her trembling arm. But at this moment, a strange smile suddenly appeared on the young Pope's face. Isabel's heart skipped a beat. She only felt a force that directly knocked her body away. It wasn't just her that was knocked away, but also Nye who was supporting her. The moment she flew away, Isabel saw a figure behind her. Alan, the owner of the City of God's dungeon. Sorry, I've always been the Pope's spy. The moment Isabel fell into the pool, the whole pool instantly exploded with a dazzling light. She could feel that the power that she had been familiar with for 15 years was crazily flowing out of her body at this moment. At the same time, the coffin that contained D instantly exploded. He still didn't wake up. Instead, he crazily absorbed the powerful energy in the pool. At the same time, the filaments in the huge flower in the pool instantly stretched out and wrapped around D's body, pulling D into the corolla bit by bit. The corolla began to wither rapidly, and the huge crystal in the stamen burst out with a strong, colorful light. How can this be? Isabel struggled to get up. Ha ha ha! The young Pope laughed crazily at this moment. There is no such thing as the true ancestor of vampires. D is the source of everything. All the monsters, all the vampires, are nothing but the failed products of Cicero's experiments. Isabel and Nye couldn't help but show extreme horror in their eyes. All humans are just his experiments. The young Pope's eyes were fanatical as he rushed toward the flower that was about to bear fruit. D is the mother lode. With the young Pope's fanatical words, the body of D, entangled by the filaments, began to melt, turning into bright red blood that flowed into the huge crystal that was about to mature. It was like a heart that was about to recover, flashing and quickly absorbing the blood. Enough. At this moment, the young Pope suddenly exploded and knocked the D out of the crystal. He himself was crazily hugging the huge crystal. D's body fell into the pool and was instantly petrified. Let me become one with you. Become the true creator. They were two pairs of eyes hidden in the dark. Madanza was shocked, but Lady Nan was stunned. In the many-page worlds that she had experienced, Obos, as the only male protagonist, should be the center of the entire page world. But here, D seemed to be just a simple tool? The boss could tolerate it, but could Book of Gaia tolerate it? This isn't the diary of the boss's sister. Could it be that there is a plot where love turns into hate that I haven't experienced yet? At this moment, her arm suddenly lifted out of her control, and a red light shot out quickly toward the mother lode. That was about to be completed. It was Madanzo. At this moment, he was grabbing her arm. A bright red light beam blasted in front of the crystal, instantly destroying half of the young pope's body. He couldn't hug the crystal, and the remaining half of his body fell into the pool. At this moment, his eyes were filled with disbelief, as if he had lost his mind. No! At this moment, Madanzo rushed toward the crystal with the holy light sword in her hand and slashed down. End of this chapter. Chapter 23:13. It was like the eruption of a singularity. When the sword of holy light slashed the crystal, a ray of light burst the entire coral mother tree from the inside out. The terrifying energy flowed backward from the giant flower that nurtured the mother lode. The energy that was crazily absorbed from the earth and the energy that flowed backward from the giant flower collided with each other like two floods. The terrifying energy turbulence instantly swept through the entire space. Their bodies were directly knocked away by the turbulence and thrown into the sky. Beams of energy extended from the earth. Like a chain reaction, the entire Earth's core began to shake crazily, and everything began to collapse. Rumble! Madanzo! Lady Nan's face was pale. Under the control of the large amount of lightning that accumulated in the sky due to the eruption of the Earth's energy, she dodged a pitiful energy turbulence and caught Madanzo. At this time, Madanzo's hands were charred black from the explosion. There was blood at the corner of her mouth, and her breathing was weak. "You're crazy!" Lady Nan was furious. "Do you know what you're doing?" Breaking the situation, Madanzo coughed out a mouthful of blood. "Since we were wrong from the moment we came, then let everything be destroyed, the pages can be reincarnated, let everything return to its original appearance." Lady Nan said angrily, "If you and I are reincarnated, who can I find to reason with?" Madanzo said faintly, "You really encountered a fatal danger in the Book of Gaia that would endanger your life?" Nan Xiaonan was stunned. She looked at the scene of the Earth's core exploding like a pot at this time. The energy turbulence that rushed to the sky could easily crush people. If this wasn't a fatal danger, what was? If there is a fatal danger. Madanzo took a deep breath at this time. "I guess, when you encountered the first page world, you were already dead?" This. Lady Nan opened her mouth, and was about to say something, but her eyes focused and she blurted out, "What's that?" Madanzo looked at her prompt subconsciously, and a strange color flashed in her eyes. She murmured, "Angel," in the energy beams that rushed to the sky. Tsang Lei, whose synchronization rate had reached 500%, was crazily beating Fairmont, who was like a demon king. They seemed to be the two sides of the same coin. The collision of the holy light and the demon energy. Tsang Lei's iron fist broke Fairmont's body again and again. However, it couldn't give Fairmont a fatal blow. Every time Fairmont's body shattered, its shattered body would instantly wrap around a small round hole and recover. Suddenly, Fairmont's body exploded once again. However, this time, Fairmont didn't regenerate quickly. Its broken body tissues turned into a black mass in an instant and directly wrapped around Tsang Lei. The situation was too sudden. Tsang Lei was like a lump of black mud that was pinched and instantly fell from the sky. Two screams came from inside Tsang Lei at this time. It was the screams of Air Lily and Asakes. Lady Nan couldn't help but feel numb. When did Asakes come in again? "I deserve to work overtime? Is the work of Onyx Soul so difficult?" She had been traveling alone in the crack of the previous dimension. Although there were dangers, it was also so tiring, okay? She took a deep breath and quickly suppressed the negative emotions in her heart. She glanced at Madanzo coldly and suddenly said, "I helped you to meet Elohim. Now it's your turn to help me." Madanzo. It didn't meet Elohim by itself. What did it have to do with this? Besides, it didn't have time to meet Elohim. The younger Elohim was not the one it really wanted to meet. Besides, it had not had time to say a word to the young Elohim. I don't care. I don't want to listen. What do you want to do? Madanza was silent for a while. Lady Nan pulled it and directly swooped down. In an instant, they flew into a patch of coral trees that were still tenaciously surviving. Rush in, rush out. At this time, Nan Xiaonan's arms had a lot of essence, fruits. Senior, come on. Lady Nan took a deep breath. There's nothing that one Song Lei can't solve. If there is, then two. In an instant, Madanzo understood Nan Xiaonan's plan. K-Air Lily could create Song Lei, because K-Air Lily was the pilot of Song Lei. But so was Nan Xiaonan, and this woman even secretly created Song Lei in the last page world. Perhaps she had a deeper understanding of Song Lei than K-Air Lily. You should be able to do it yourself. What can I help you with? Madanzo frowned. I'm not familiar with the structure of Song Lei. Lady Nan said directly, you can create the outer shell of Song Lei. I'll complete its inner part and control system. Essence needs to consume spiritual energy. Aren't you going to share some of it? I'm afraid that I'll die if I overload it. You'll cover for me. Madanzo was stunned. This woman was really shameless. A pair of terrifying eyes appeared on the half-panoramic screen of the cockpit. It was a pair of eyes that were completely attached to the screen. These were Femont's eyes. In the cockpit, K-Air Lily was constantly shaking the controller of Song Lei. But no matter how she operated, the trapped Song Lei couldn't move at all. The driving system was constantly reminding the damage of the body. Everything was developing in the worst direction. But K-Air Lily didn't give up. Asakes knew that he didn't have the qualification to give up. He held Holy Glory again, intending to activate the Saint's Confession again. However, this time, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't activate the Light of Confession again, let alone make the Saint's shadow appear. Arthasies could not help but laugh bitterly. How could his utilitarian thoughts be the true trigger of the light of repentance? He slowly sighed and silently used the fruit of essence to create a sword. He held it in his hand and prepared to make the last resistance when the cockpit door was broken. K-Air Lily, how much energy does your Song Lei have left? At this critical moment, Yulia's face suddenly appeared on the screen of the cockpit. Yulia was actually in the same environment as the cockpit they were in. 41.7%. Without hesitation, K-Air Lily quickly reported an accurate number. Yulia quickly said on the screen, activate the anti-force field device with all your strength. Leave the rest to me. Understood. K-Air Lily quickly responded. She had already seen it, she had seen the other blue thunder. The difference was that the second Song Lei was in the berserk state under the new system, spreading out its bloody wings. Come on! Song Lei with bloody wings swooped down from the sky. As it stretched out its arm, a strange force field instantly spread out. At the same time, K-Air Lily also released another force field with all her strength. Two powerful forces, one positive and one negative, collided with each other and cancelled each other out, and in this mutual cancellation, Fairmont, which had turned into dark matter, seemed to be boiling at this time. This terrible thing whose body was broken and reformed again and again, for the first time, let out a scream. At this time, in the cockpit of Song Lei with bloody wings, Lady Nan focused on the cancellation parameters of the positive and negative force fields and said excitedly, "It's really effective. God Eater was developed in the last world to fight against messengers." Messengers were the characteristics of original Void Demon. At this time, Fairmont seemed to have part of the characteristics of original Void Demon. The iconic round hole on Fairmont's body was the best proof. What's this? Fairmont's mud body began to retreat at this time. It instinctively felt that if it was in this melting state, even its body would be obliterated. It didn't know whether this melting state or its own endurance would last longer. Perhaps its endurance was stronger. However, as long as there was an unbearable danger, it wouldn't persist. Finally, the black mud completely faded away, and Tsang-Le, which regained its freedom, instantly soared into the sky. Tsang-Le with bloody wings and Tsang-Le with holy wings appeared side by side in the sky, one on the left and one on the right. One was violent and the other was bathed in light. It's time to attack, K-Air Lily. Understood. In an instant, two Tsang-Le attacked at the same time. Half of the sky was holy, and the other half was bloody red. Fairmont had just recovered its original body state, and it instantly welcomed the mixed double attack of two Tsang-Le. Why was it like this? Why was it like this? Under the crazy double attack, Fairmont's body was like a sandbag. Its recovery speed was fast enough, but in the face of this double attack, the recovery speed was obviously not enough. How did these two huge machines appear out of thin air? Countless questions filled Fairmont's mind. The damage of its body couldn't affect its thinking at this time. Returning to the origin, why was it born? As Griffith, he had been buried in the nest of the giant lizard, but he was reborn as Fairmont. When it was knocked to the ground and saw the essence fruit scattered all over the ground due to the impact, it was like a light shooting into the sea level in the thick fog. Because of these special crystals, in an instant, Fairmont rushed to the sky with all its strength. Countless huge tentacles shot out from the ground and completely detonated the energy light beam on the ground that had long been chaotic. The mixed double attack of two Tsang-Le was interrupted in an instant. Fairmont didn't take the initiative to attack at this time. It just stayed in the sky calmly, looking at the two Tsang-Le, or looking at the people in the Tsang-Le's cockpit. Suddenly, something flew out from the ground and directly fell into Fairmont's palm. A essence fruit. In the cockpit, Mr. Asakes couldn't help but tremble. He never told Griffith about the essence. However, at this time, not good. Does it know? Just as Fairmont grabbed the first essence fruit, then essence fruits on the ground flew toward Fairmont like meteors. In the blink of an eye, countless essence fruit crystals gathered around Fairmont. Crystals twined around Fairmont's body like a star ring. What is it doing? Lady Nan was shocked at this time. A low voice came from its mouth like a demon king. If you are something that can fulfill wishes, then, please fulfill my wish. As it spoke, the devil-like Fairmont slowly raised its arm. In its palm, a pair of exquisite earrings released an incomparably powerful radiance in an instant. At the same time, on the dome of the sky, a huge virtual door appeared out of thin air. The door slowly opened. A large number of essence fruits completely lost their brilliance and shattered at this moment. However, more essence fruits flew out from the ground at this time and added to the star ring around Fairmont. The door opened less than a third, but a magnificent land could be faintly seen. Another world! Fairmont roared at this time. It's really a different world. In the cockpit, Lady Nan suddenly opened her eyes wide. What kind of different world was that? It was just a lie used to fool Griffith. Even the so-called key to the gate of the different world was just an ordinary piece of jewelry. This jewelry was given to her by the Dungeon Master Alan when she participated in the castle selection. It was used to wear her body. I didn't expect that a lie actually came true. Nan Xiaonan instantly sat down and felt a headache. Her lie made Griffith deeply believe in the existence of the otherworld Pure Land. Then, he, who had turned into Fairmont, actually created an otherworld by relying on the myriad element's characteristics and using the myriad element fruit at a crazy rate? No wonder the boss said that Griffith would find the different world. Nan Xiaonan suddenly trembled. It turned out that the boss had already given her a hint, but it was realized in this way? A brand new world. Fairmont laughed crazily at this moment. The star rings around it all exploded at this time, and a huge light beam directly entered the illusory world through the gate of the different world. Then, this terrible demon rushed directly to the gate in the sky, like a moth to a flame, regardless of everything. "I'm coming." Finally, it disappeared in the illusory gate of the gate. The gate still didn't completely open, but the illusory different world behind the gate gradually became more and more real. On the ground, the two Blue Thunder were motionless. In the cockpit, Asakes and Nan Xiaonan looked at each other expressionlessly through the screen. From a certain point of view, what caused this result was a lie that they jointly made. And at this time, Madanzo was also dumbfounded. It was also one of the fabricators of this lie. After a long time, the gate in the sky slowly closed, but Fairmont didn't appear again. Fairmont seemed to have really disappeared behind this gate forever. Until the gate in the sky completely closed and slowly disappeared, Mr. Asakes shivered and said subconsciously, Is it over?" "Not yet." Lady Nan smiled bitterly at this time. "This core world, I'm afraid it's almost at its limit. I don't know if Blue Thunder can withstand the power of the world's destruction. Perhaps when Fairmont rushed into the gate, choosing to follow it was a good choice. But I don't know if such a different world is just a derivative of a book of Gaia. No, Fairmont may have really created a different world." Madanzo took a deep breath at this time. In the beginning, it may have really done it, and then this scene was recorded. At this time, Madanzo even had a hunch that the different world didn't disappear when the original was destroyed, but still existed in the dimensional crack, silently experiencing the baptism of time. "Not good, the collapse has already affected here." Air Lily hurriedly pointed to the front. That was the edge of the core. At this time, the edge of the core had been swallowed by the energy released by the Earth. This kind of swallowing began to rapidly approach from the outside to the inside. Approaching, with the speed of lightning, swallowing. Everything was completely swallowed. Even the body of the God-Eater was instantly broken under the destructive power. Soon, only the torso of Blue Thunder was left. "This time it's really BD." Lady Nan smiled bitterly and slowly closed her eyes. Hateful Madanzo, that bitch, said that she had never really experienced life and death. "This doesn't count?" "Not dead yet. Not dead yet." Madanzo's voice slowly came into Nan Xiaonan's ears. She opened her eyes and saw that she was in an empty and huge spherical space. This space seemed to be as big as the core of the Earth. The inside of the spherical space was made of seamless metal. At this time, she was floating in this spherical space. Madanzo, the other Blue Thunder, Isabel, and the owner of the dungeon, Alan, were all floating in this spherical space. The fourth experimental site was damaged for unknown reasons. The production of Universal Mother Ore has been terminated. The completion rate of the Mother Ore is 93%. Data extended to other experimental sites. The fourth experimental site will restart in 1732 seconds. The seed of the Mother Ore has been placed. This is the seed number 3971, marking placing successful. Countdown to restart the fourth experimental site. Generating a new scene, the cold voice slowly sounded in the spherical space. Suddenly, in the center of the spherical space, a little space was distorted, and then a piece of crystal as tall as a person slowly appeared. And in this crystal, Nan Xiaonan saw. Boss. No, this should be D? At this time, a whirlpool suddenly appeared behind Nan Xiaonan and instantly sucked her in. She was too familiar with this thing. But this time, Madanzo was a little far away, and she suddenly didn't know who to find to ride her. Chapter 23:14. Removal of foreign body complete. Beginning to accept, originally, Miss Nan was prepared to let out an ancestral scream, but she soon realized that something was wrong. This vortex didn't seem to be the passage to the next page world. It's still here. She subconsciously looked to her side. Madanzo also looked at her at the same time and gave her an answer. It's still here. Does it mean that they are still in the page world of Motherlode? Nan Xiaonan could not help but feel a chill in her heart. When the core world was destroyed, the entire world turned into a huge sphere, and the last thing that appeared in the sphere was called the seed. Everyone, are you okay? It was Asash's voice. He was not far away. At this time, he was rubbing his head as he stood up. He quickly saw Lily lying beside him. Lily also woke up at this time. Her eyes were blank, and she did not know what to do. Where is this place? Another voice sounded. It was Isabel's voice. She stood up awkwardly and looked around with a frown. The surrounding environment was similar to that of the spherical space. It was a dusky environment, but it seemed to be much, much smaller. This place was only about 200 to 300 square meters in size. It was a square space, and all four sides, from top to bottom, were metal decks. This is Celia? Suddenly, Mr. Arthaces cried out in surprise. He found an unconscious girl in the room, Selene, a child who was equally important to Mr. Arthaces. Celia? How are you? Answer me. Celine was a nun in an orphanage secretly funded by Arthasheth. If Lily was a family member to Asax, then Celia was a very important friend. A confidant. As for Celia, Arthaces felt sorry for her. Because he couldn't provide her with too many resources, the finances of the orphanage had always been tight. She even had to work part-time every night to barely maintain the expenses of the orphanage. Even so, Celia had never complained about it. She's not dead. Madanzo silently walked to Asash's side. Asax looked at this child in confusion. He did not seem to know this child, but this child seemed to know Yulia. But she can't wake up. Madanzo shook her head again. Don't worry. As long as I'm alive, I will try my best to make her open her eyes again. You are Madanzo. Madanzo said indifferently, as for who I am, it's not important for the time being. What's important is that I want to know who he is. Madanzo's eyes suddenly looked at a corner of the room. Affected by it, everyone's eyes also looked at the corner of the room. At this moment, there was a person standing silently in the corner of the room. It was the owner of the prison in the City of God's Blessing, Mr. Allen. Isabel's eyes narrowed. She would not forget that this guy's last sneak attack almost caused the young Elohim to successfully fuse with Motherlode. I didn't expect Elohim to always have a spy in the City of God's Blessing. Isabel looked at Allen and sneered. It seems that old bastard has always known everything about the City of God's Blessing. He's one of the Pope's men? Asax could not help but frown. He has always been. Isabel said coldly. Unfortunately, he hid it too well. I only found out about it last. Asax muttered, and there was even a hint of anger in his eyes. He seemed to have understood something. Allen, after we were bombarded, we met in the underground space. Did you do it on purpose? You didn't fall because of the bombardment at all, but you deliberately led us into the core of the earth? He stood there like a ghost, not reacting at all to the interrogation of Asash's and Isabel. Allen? Nan Xiaonan suddenly said, Who are you? Asax and Isabel looked at Nan Xiaonan subconsciously. She was still Yulia, and they would only treat her as Yulia. Nan Xiaonan took a step forward at this time. I don't know if you have noticed, but the people who were teleported out have a common characteristic. Asax subconsciously fell into deep thought. Suddenly, his eyes lit up as if he thought of something. Isabel was half a beat faster. They are all people from the venue? That's right. Lady Nan nodded. Whether it's me, Mr. Asax, Lily, or you, Teacher Isabel, Celion, and Madanzo, we all came to this strange place after being swallowed by the black mud in the venue that day. In other words, this Mr. Allen is very likely to be one as well. Once again, they looked at Allen, who was silent in the corner. Although it's very likely that they are all people in the venue. Nan Xiaonan shook her head at this time. But it's hard to say whether they are companions or enemies. It's almost time to reveal your true identity, right? After all, the owner of the dungeon suddenly let out a sigh of relief and took off the iron mask on his face. What was under the mask was not the face of an experienced person, but a very ordinary face. Everyone frowned and tried to find some memories of the other party in the venue that day, but there was no impression. Don't think about it, I'm just a very ordinary person. Mr. Allen shook his head at this time. You might not believe me, but I'm just a temporary worker in the venue that day, not a big shot like you. Essex and Isabel looked at each other. Nan Xiaonan didn't believe him, but Madanzo didn't say anything. It had its own way of judging and standard. Mr. Allen smiled bitterly. I'm just a logistics person in charge of the stage layout. When the black mud appeared, everyone was swallowed, including me. After I woke up, I was in the city of God. Speaking of which, I might have appeared earlier than Mr. Essex and Ms. Isabel. He briefly described his experience in the city of God. He didn't have any special talents, but by chance, he joined the city of God and became an employee of the Holy See headquarters. 15 years ago, when the Holy See retreated in defeat, he didn't make it in time and was left behind in the end. I did everything I could to survive, Mr. Allen said as he looked at everyone. No matter what kind of business it was, I did it, and in the end, I even became a slave owner. I kept collecting the Holy See's legacy, and in an old site, I found some tools of the Holy See, and there was a tool that was similar to a signal transmitter. So, you're connected to Elohim just like that? Isabel couldn't help but frown. Mr. Allen smiled bitterly. At first, I didn't think that the person I contacted through the signal transmitter would be the Pope of the new Holy See. We did contact each other, but he only said that he was from Laputa. He promised me that as long as I worked for him, he would give me a chance to enter Laputa. Essex sneered. Didn't you say that you were corroded by essence, and don't have long to live? That was just to gain your trust, Earl Rose, Mr. Allen said calmly. Mr. Allen said calmly, I don't think I've done anything wrong. I just want to live, better live. No wonder you know the mind rewriting skill. It seems like Elohim is secretly supporting you. Arthashis shook his head. Allen, he was right, he did not do anything wrong. In order to survive, no one knew how hard he worked in secret to become the biggest slave owner in God-blessed city. And he even established the underground order of God-blessed city. Compared to Allen's hard work, Essex felt that he was just a salted fish, and a salted fish with good luck. First, he became a vampire with power, then he became the ruler of God-blessed city, with authority. As for Isabel, her position in the new Holy See was very high, and she even had access to the secrets of essence. However, this Allen had climbed up from the bottom step by step. It seems that we can get out of here. At this moment, Madanzo's voice suddenly sounded. She stood in front of the wall and pressed her hand on the wall, and a door slowly opened on the wall. What is this place? They had been walking for almost half an hour in this seemingly endless tunnel, but the environment remained the same. They didn't completely trust Aaron's first time, but since Aaron was able to tell them about the Holy Maiden Conference, it proved that he was also from the Free Cities. It seems to be a place similar to a base. Miss Nan couldn't help but shake her head. What she cared about was the cold notification. From the notification, they knew that this should be a huge test site. The core of the Earth they were in was the fourth test site. There were many similar test sites, and they all seemed to be set up to complete the mother lode. Then, who was it that created such a testing ground? Isabel. What happened 15 years ago? Essex was walking with Celia on his back, and K-Forehead Lily was following silently. What else do you want to hide? There is no true ancestor of vampires, Isabel said calmly. Isabel said indifferently, this is all a lie from the Vatican. The only real vampire is demons really exist, but they all escaped from the core of the earth. They are like some kind of failed products. What? Asakes was shocked. Isabel thought for a moment and said, every time Dee releases the power in her body, she will lose control and cause great damage. In order to cover it up, Pope Cicero created a lie about the true ancestor of vampires, and claimed that only Dee can fight against the true ancestor. Why did he do that? Lady Nan turned around. I am not very sure. Isabel shook her head and said, it seems to be to let Dee live in a special environment. 15 years ago, Pope Cicero seemed to want to do something, and it caused Dee's power to go out of control. In that chaos, Pope Cicero was seriously injured and on the verge of death. Although Dee's rampage was controlled, it was still not stable. At this point, Isabel smiled bitterly and said, I don't know if it was fate that I let myself witness this. Originally, I just wanted to find a place to hide. I didn't expect to become the person who heard Pope Cicero's last words. He taught me how to temporarily take away a part of Dee's power and told me about the mother lode. I didn't understand at that time, but now it seems that Cicero had already noticed it. Elohim. Perhaps he already knew what he was doing, so he wanted to separate Dee's power. In order to prevent Mother Lode from maturing. Actually, Mother Lode should have matured 15 years ago. The Mother Lode we saw might not be the real Mother Lode. Lady Nan took a deep breath at this time. Even if Elohim finally succeeded in fusing with Mother Lode, it's not the real Mother Lode. Yulia? Asakes looked at her in shock. Lady Nan said, even if the Mother Lode in the core world matured, I'm afraid it's only a parameter that needs to be used to create the real Mother Lode. You can't pretend that you didn't hear that notification sound, right? Everyone was silent. The essence fruit was already very magical, and the more terrifying Mother Lode was even more unimaginable. Even so, it was not the essence Mother Lode that needed to be created in the end. Then, what kind of existence would the final product be? At this moment, another door appeared. There was no defense mechanism here, and there was no obstruction along the way. It was as if someone was giving them the green light to go all the way. Everyone cautiously walked through the newly opened door. Their breathing stopped at this moment. The scene in front of Lady Nan was unforgettable for the rest of her life. She saw a huge production field. The caterpillar was transporting spheres that were about 3 meters in diameter. Within the spheres there were bodies that were in the process of development. Some were just embryos, and some had grown into the appearance of children. There were even some that had completely grown up. This is D? Isabel walked closer subconsciously and looked at the bodies in the dense spheres. She said in a trembling voice, they are all. Then, there was a dead silence. Only the sound of the caterpillar tracks could be heard rhythmically. At this moment, a lazy voice suddenly came from behind everyone. The moment this voice sounded, Lady Nan was instinctively startled. Oh Gaia! Why are you so naughty? Didn't we agree that you're not allowed to enter my royal brother's research room? If you break the agreement, you'll be slapped. It's him. It's the voice of Prince Desolate. Nan Xiaonan looked back subconsciously. At the door, a figure slowly appeared. But at this moment, everything in front of her was instantly broken. Under their feet, a huge whirlpool appeared and sucked them in instantly. This time, it was real. Nan Xiaonan suddenly had such an idea. This whirlpool was the channel to the next page world. Could it be that this is the true ending? Whoosh! Nan Xiaonan rushed out of the thick, ice-cold snow, gasping for air. In front of her was a world of boundless white snow. In the distant snow-capped mountains, she could vaguely see a huge and majestic capital city. Puff, puff, puff! At the same time, figures fell from the sky and directly plunged into the thick snow. Nan Xiaonan heaved a sigh of relief. They were all here. No one was missing. In the sky, 4 elks were pulling a sleigh as they flew past quickly. Sitting on the sleigh was a white-bearded man in red clothes. Suddenly, the sleigh slowly landed. It seemed that it had found everyone on the snow. The sound of bells sounded as the sleigh moved. Finally, the sleigh landed on the snow. The white-bearded man in red clothes was curiously looking at the people who climbed out of the snow. "Who are you?" the white-bearded old man asked curiously. "We are— oh, I see," the white-bearded old man suddenly said. "You are also guests who came to attend the wedding of the Prince of the Spring Kingdom and the Princess of the Chilly Winter Kingdom, right? ######## PS. As usual, this chapter ends. Chapter 23:15. On the white snowfield, a sleigh was speeding along. A group of people were sitting on the sleigh, talking to an old man with a white beard. Of course, they didn't know what a wedding banquet was, let alone the kingdom of early spring and the kingdom of winter. Isabel found it hard to imagine that she had come to another world, until she asked the old man with a white beard if he had heard of Laputa, if he knew about God's blessed church, and if there were vampires in this world. Vampires? Is there really such a creature? I always thought that it was just a legend used to scare disobedient children. The old man with a white beard showed a surprised expression. He called himself Nicholas, and his duty was to give the first New Year's gift to the children of the Kingdom of Winter on the first day of the new year every year. Lady Nan frowned when she heard this. Listening to the sound of the bells when the sleigh moved, she felt that there should be a song here. Why could the elk talk? How did the sleigh fly so high? Why did the old man with a white beard sneak into the sleeping child's room? Why did every family rush to buy socks on the last day of the year? They didn't even let go of the black silk socks that were not warm? Because this was a world of magic. Legend had it that the Queen of the Kingdom of Winter was a beauty who had terrifying magic power and was good at using snow magic. When the sleigh left the snowfield, Nan Xiaonan and the others had a rough understanding of this world. They also had new identities under the suspicion of Nicholas. Travelers who didn't return in the snow. "Oh, so you're lost." Nicholas nodded. "You're so lucky. If it weren't for the rest period of the ice storm that occurs once in 100 years, I'm afraid you would have frozen to death in the ice storm." "It's so nice to meet you, Mr. Nicholas." Miss Nan's face was full of gratitude. Essex and Isabel were watching Yulia's performance in silence. In his impression, was Yulia the type to have such strong social skills? No. Yulia was the Holy Maiden candidate, and she was also the most popular candidate. No matter if it was in terms of manners or manners, she was impeccable. It was only natural that she would have excellent social skills, which wasn't strange at all. The strange thing was this Yulia. However, time could change a person, let alone in a strange environment. Essex had been squatting in the City of God's Protection for more than 10 years, and he had once lost himself. At this moment, Essex and Isabel were at a loss of what to do. In the end, they simply left the communication work to Yulia. Not long after, the sleigh landed on the top of a snowy mountain. This was where Nicholas lived. Even in the land of winter, it was the northernmost and coldest place. It was said that Nicholas had gone out to look for materials to prepare a wedding gift for the princess and prince. "Mr. Nicholas, can we go to the wedding?" "Of course." The old man smiled kindly and said, "This is the most celebratory day between the two countries. How can we not welcome you? Wait for me to prepare the gift, then come with me to the City of Winter. I will introduce Her Majesty the Queen to you." Lady Nan suddenly said in disbelief, "Queen, is it so easy to meet her?" Nicholas smiled and said, "The Queen is also a human. Why can't we meet her? She is not a man-eating monster. Don't worry, Her Majesty the Queen is a very friendly person." Lady Nan pondered and said, "Mr. Nicholas, are you familiar with the Queen?" "Of course. I still remember her. She was such a lovely child." Nicholas smiled and said, "When I was young, I also gave her gifts." "When you were young, what about when you grew up?" Nicholas said, "Of course, I didn't give her gifts when she grew up. If adults also want to prepare gifts, I only have so much time in a year. I can't prepare it at all. It seemed to make sense, but it felt wrong. So, how long has it been since you last saw the Queen of Winter? Nicholas thought for a while and said sadly, when she was 9 years old, she didn't believe in my existence. Believe? Nan Xiaonan subconsciously glanced at Madanzo. This was a habit she had developed after experiencing many page worlds. But this time, Madanzo didn't look at her. She just stood alone on the snowy peak, looking into the distance, thinking about life. Perhaps the incident with Pope Elohim had brought too much of a shock to her, so she hadn't recovered yet? Come, you must be hungry. Come and eat something. At this time, Nicholas called everyone to a table that was directly cut open by a pine tree. After waving his hand, hot soup, bread, and other food appeared on the table. This gave everyone an illusion, as if Nicholas was using myriad element. However, this was magic. In this world, magic seemed to be more than just an elemental power, but the ability to do whatever one wanted. Of course, doing whatever one wanted was a bit exaggerated, but it could do a lot of things. In Madanzo's opinion, the energy level was very low, but it was close to the rules. In this world of winter, she recovered part of her holy light power. Lady Nan could also use star creation. The special skill of Onyx Soul was also restored. She felt that she could surf again. However, Asax was still a vampire. Air Lily also had the constitution of a vampire because she was bitten by him, but she had not completely transformed. Only Isabel and Aaron were left in the state of ordinary people. Isabel's temporary power from D had disappeared when she fell into the pool of the mother coral tree. So Isabel and Aaron were really weak and helpless at this time. By the way, Sir Nicholas, what is the name of the Princess of Winter? Lady Nan asked casually at this time. Snow White. Nicholas smiled and said, This is a child who was born with the blessings of the whole country. I also gave her a gift last year. Snow White what? Lady Nan looked up suddenly. Snow White, is there a problem? Nicholas looked at her in confusion. Lady Nan frowned at this time. Isn't this the page world about Santa Claus's story? She couldn't help but ask tentatively, Then, this Snow White, is there 7 dwarfs around her? 7 dwarfs? Nicholas showed a stunned expression and frowned. How can there be 7 dwarfs around Snow White? The 7 dwarfs are the minions of the evil princess. Eldest princess is? Miss Nan suddenly had a look of understanding. She knew that Book of Gaia had never done anything serious. Nicholas muttered at this time, That's a name that shouldn't be mentioned. Princess Grand used vicious witchcraft more than 10 years ago to kill the king and hang her fiancé, causing the entire chilly winter kingdom to fall into panic. Since then, no one dares to mention the name of Princess Grand. Nan Xiaonan shrugged her shoulders. She had long been prepared to continue asking questions. She had seen too many old men like this who knew a lot but still pretended to be mysterious and evasive. But if you really want to know, it's not impossible. Nicholas said at this time, Princess Gaia hasn't appeared for so many years. It doesn't matter if this name is mentioned or not. Damn you, Princess Gaia's name is Princess Yu Yi. Uncle Nicholas looked calm, but don't tell others that I told you. Miss Yulia, what's wrong with you? Miss Yulia? Yulia suddenly fell to the ground, motionless. No matter how they shook her, they couldn't wake her up. Strange, how can this be? Nicholas couldn't help showing a hint of doubt. She looks a bit like she is cursed. You send her to the house first. I'll think of a way. The night in the snowfield was particularly cold. Nicholas's house was big enough. Even if a lot of guests came at once, there were enough rooms to accommodate them. They returned to their rooms and didn't come out at night. They were probably digesting what happened in the past 2 days. The moonlight shone on Nan Xiaonan's face. Only Madanzo was sitting in front of her window. At this time, Madanzo looked at Nan Xiaonan on the bed blankly and said, I say, is it enough? How long are you going to pretend? There was no response. Metatro rolled his eyes and grabbed her, giving her 2 tight slaps across her face. However, when the slap was about to touch Nan Xiaonan, it went straight through her face. "What's the matter?" Madanzo let go of her hand angrily. "Why did you suddenly pretend to be unconscious during dinner?" Nan Xiaonan was crying at this time. "Senpai, I may really die." Madanzo frowned and looked at the woman in front of her suspiciously. "I won't go to the capital of cold winter." Nan Xiaonan hugged the pillow tightly. "I won't go even if you kill me." "Because Princess Gaia?" Madanzo couldn't help but ponder. Nan Xiaonan pretended to be unconscious after Nicholas said the name of the princess. "Yi princess? Who exactly is she to make you so scared?" Nan Xiaonan opened her mouth and hugged the pillow tighter. "My boss's wife, who else could it be? All the black souls are managed by her, why do you think I'm scared?" Madanzo's frown deepened. Nan Xiaonan said, "You're not wrong, it's her. Asash's saint ancestor. The one that was sold by your heavenly state." "Is that so?" Madanzo just nodded and didn't look too shocked. "Even if you're the manager of black souls, you didn't do anything wrong, what are you afraid of? I know the person you're talking about, she's not that kind of unreasonable woman. Sometimes, her principles are comparable to the rules. That's because you haven't seen her when she's jealous, haven't seen the devil's face behind her, haven't seen her tearing other people's faces to the ground, God knows. There were so many page worlds here. Did anyone know what she did in those page worlds? Every time she was uncontrollably teased by her boss's image in the page worlds, she was always scared witless. Anyway, even if you beat me to death, I won't go. I won't go either." Nan Xiaonan clenched her teeth and said, "At least before I'm ready." Madanzo rolled her eyes and raised her palm. A huge force instantly pressed Nan Xiaonan onto the bed. "Beat her to death." "Damn you," Madanzo directly said. "Okay, stop fooling around. I'm acquainted with Joan of Arc, if you really can't do it, I'll plead for you, okay?" Lady Nan blinked, and her body that was slapped into a paste instantly recovered. She said incredulously, "You are acquainted? Otherwise, do you think I spent so many years in Kingdom of Heaven for nothing?" Madanzo sighed, "Although I don't know why you are so afraid of her, since she exists in the chilly winter kingdom. Isn't this good news?" "Indeed." Lady Nan pondered for a while and said with a wry smile, "I just didn't expect that in the plot of the chilly winter kingdom, Miss Yu Yi is actually the evil princess who almost destroyed the chilly winter kingdom. This is really... I don't know how she endured it. The eldest princess committed treason, but the empress ascended the throne and became the new queen. The empress is also the king's second wife. No matter how you look at this plot, it's the empress who is causing trouble. Could it be that Miss Yu Yi also encountered some trouble here? So, we have to go to the city of chilly winter even more." Madanzo said seriously, "Solve the doubts in your heart. You really have an acquaintance with Miss Yu Yi?" Nan Xiaonan asked hesitantly. "Of course. We are friends of life and death." Madanzo puffed up her chest at this time. "We have conquered thousands of worlds together. We drank tea with Baldy on the Western Spirit Mountain. We went to the Lingshao Hall and ate peaches. Our friendship is forged through real battles. You also said that you are the 11th of Onyx Soul." Nan Xiaonan sneered. Madanzo suddenly said at this time, "I am really the 11th of Beginning." "You?" Madanzo said indifferently, "Let's leave tomorrow." City of Chilly Winter, in the Ice and Snow Palace. The Queen of Chilly Winter walked in the palace expressionlessly, and the maids behind her followed carefully. "Okay, you all can leave. Don't disturb me without my order." "Yes," the maids quickly retreated. Her Majesty the Queen didn't seem to be in a good mood these 2 days. Maybe it was because Her Highness the Princess was about to get married, and as a mother, her mood was complicated? No one dared to ask this question. In these 2 days, because of her bad mood, Her Majesty the Queen had directly frozen 2 batches of maids into ice sculptures. At this time, the Queen of Chilly Winter slowly pushed open the door of the study and gently closed it. In the study, there was a blonde woman in black sitting with her hands on her cheeks. A touch of hatred and anger flashed in the eyes of the Queen of Chilly Winter, but she still took a deep breath and calmed down her emotions. She slowly walked to the front of the desk. The blonde woman in black said indifferently, "What's the matter?" There is a list of names for the wedding banquet. I want you to have a look." The Queen of Chilly Winter suppressed the anger in her heart and said calmly, "You said that about Snow White's wedding. No matter how big or small, I have to ask you first, I see. Put it down." The blonde woman in black said indifferently, "If there is nothing else, please leave." The Queen of Chilly Winter nodded and walked out of the study quickly. She did not want to stay here for even a moment. She was so humble and respectful in front of the enemy who had destroyed the entire Celtic god system. ######PS 7/11. End of this chapter. Chapter 23:16. Winter Royal City, Snow Castle, a few elk, and a sleigh. After waiting for a long time, the old man with a white beard hurriedly returned to the crowd with an apologetic look. "You don't want to see him?" Miss Nan looked surprised. The speed of the sleigh was very fast. After all, in the world of magic, it only took one morning to go from the snow peak where Nicholas lived to the Winter Royal City. Yeah. Nicholas sighed. Maybe because of the wedding preparations, Her Majesty the Queen has too many things to deal with, so she won't receive guests for the time being. What did this old man say to the guards just now? He said directly that he was Nicholas from the Great Snow Mountain and wanted to introduce a few foreigners to Her Majesty the Queen. Then, he was kicked out by the guards. The old man also said sadly that he had given gifts to these guards when they were young. The old man in red during the New Year? Isn't this a story to deceive children? Let's go. They didn't have to see the Queen. For Nan Xiaonan and Madanzo, who had many experiences in the page world, the key was how to see the ending of the story. According to Madanzo's understanding in the last page world, any behavior that would affect the ending of the story was not desirable. It was necessary to restore the original result of the page to the greatest extent in order to piece together the original truth described by the Book of Gaia. At this time, in this magic kingdom, the two of them had recovered most of their abilities. It was not difficult to enter and leave the Snow Palace. But the problem was, even if they saw the Queen of Winter, what should they do next? The two, who had no clue, chose to wait and see. Anyway, they had now arrived at the Winter Royal City. According to the nature of the Book of Gaia, there must be a demon in every major event. The wedding of the Prince of the Spring Kingdom and the Princess of the Winter Kingdom was definitely the top event of the two kingdoms. Wait, we must be close to the center. Perhaps there will be clues soon. That was the only way. Nan Xiaonan had been much more well-behaved since she knew about the existence of the princess. She didn't dare to do anything special here. Who knew if the maid had made any special arrangements here? Asakes didn't have any objections to this. If he didn't have any objections, then Kay or Lily also didn't have any objections. Isabel had some objections. She thought that they should be more proactive, but unfortunately they were too weak. To put it bluntly, it seemed that they could only rely on Asakes. After all, Arthashes was a vampire and had a certain level of self-preservation. As for Alan, he was indeed the one who set up the underground order of the entire city of God Bless. He knew how to observe the situation. So, he simply went with the flow. Nicholas was here to deliver the wedding gift, but he couldn't enter the palace. He sent the wedding gift directly to the registration office and left on his sleigh. He said that he would come back because the wedding day happened to be the first day of the new year. It was also the day when he gave gifts to all the children in the Chilly Winter Kingdom. The old man who gave the gift was even quite considerate. Before leaving, he left some travel expenses for everyone. Strange, Mr. Asakes, aren't you a vampire? Why don't you seem to be affected when you travel during the day? At this time, it was the period when the ice and snow stopped in chilly winter kingdom once in 100 years. The entire chilly winter kingdom was sunny, but it was not hot. Instead, it was very cool because of the ice sculptures everywhere. I don't know. Facing Yulia's question, Mr. Asakes shook his head and muttered, I always feel that the sunlight here is missing something. However, this is also good. At least it's more convenient. Yulia, should we find a place to discuss it? Asakes felt that there must be a framework when so many people gathered together. They were all victims lost in the world of Book of Gaia. They were all looking for a way home. It was rare for so many people to meet, so naturally, it was not good to continue to fight alone. Nanshaunen thought for a while and said, There's a hotel over there. Let's temporarily use it as a place to stay. We're not familiar with this place, so I suggest that before sunset, we should each go around the king's city and inquire about it. At night, we will gather and share information. But one thing to pay attention to is to try not to have too much contact with the people here to avoid complications. In short, be careful. The proposal was quickly implemented. Lily naturally wanted to be in a group with Asakes. She didn't have much choice but to choose to be with Asakes. After all, she was most familiar with Asakes. The two families had been in contact since childhood. I'll go alone, Mr. Allen said indifferently at this time. Of course, if you don't trust me, you can follow me. Nanshaunen expressed that there was no need. Everyone thought that she was going to move together with Metatro. After all, Yulia and Metatro were very close to each other along the way. However, they didn't expect that the two of them would choose to move separately, and they were the first to leave the team. After that, Mr. Allen also left the team. After Asakes pondered for a while, he took them to the hotel to settle down. Celia needs someone to take care of her. He looked at Lily and Isabel, who followed him. Who wants to stay? You decide, Isabel said indifferently. Asakes thought for a while and said, Lily, please stay and take care of Celia. You are better at taking care of people. Isabel is used to being served. She can't do this kind of thing. Okay. What do you want to say to me? Along the way, Asakes and Isabel walked side by side. He was too familiar with this woman. It was easy for him to guess some of her thoughts. The reason he left Lily behind was to create an opportunity for the two of them to be alone. After all, along the way, everyone was moving together. Some words were not suitable to be spoken in front of others. You know what I want to say. Isabel sighed slowly. Asakes, you always like to ask questions when you already know the answer. You are playing dumb. I am not as smart as you think. I can guess everything and guess correctly. Asakes smiled bitterly. In this generation of the Sage family, I am the only one left. If I am gone, this family will be gone. I am not as good as you and Ludic. Isabel only listened to those words. She sneered. Asakes, you have broken the rules of our two families. The sage's confession is taboo. You recited it. Moreover, you didn't recite it. You even summoned the phantom of the sage. Asakes said helplessly, In that situation, I can't do anything, can I? I can't just sit there and wait for death. Moreover, since this power of confession exists, it is for people to use. Isabel frowned and said, You should know that the words of repentance are created under inducement. What is holy glory? Holy glory is the tears of despair left by the sage in the prison. It is passed down to let us remember this humiliation. Even if she sublimated in the fire, even if she became a sage, it is just... Isabel! He suddenly grabbed her arm and interrupted her agitated emotions. He stared at this woman who was as angry as a female cat and said in a deep voice, I said, in that situation, I can't do anything. To you, she is a sage. To the people of this free city, she is a sage. But to me, Asakes said expressionlessly, she is just my ancestor. Since holy glory was passed down as a form of protection, then no matter how it was born, To me, it is just a power that my ancestors used to protect their descendant. I used it when I was at the end of the road. Is there anything wrong with that? Isabel's chest rose and fell crazily. She shook off Asash's hand and said coldly, "It is because you have never respected the sage that you have always been unable to pray. A descendant of a sage family can only rely on a piece of trash that carefully lives by relying on the power of will crystal card. You need a piece of trash like me to protect you now, Isabel." "Cousin Isabel." Asake smiled. Isabel looked as if she had eaten a dead mouse and said angrily, "You are the disgrace of the Dark family." "Then what are you?" Asake sneered. "You are just a piece of trash that eats both men and women. You rely on the halo of the sage family to do whatever you want and lose yourself to your own desires." The two of them were like needles against a wheat awn, as if there were sparks flying. "All right. Please don't quarrel." At this moment, a white rose suddenly appeared in their line of sight. Asake and Isabel couldn't help but be startled. They saw a young girl carrying a small basket smiling at the two of them. "It is not right for good friends to quarrel. I will treat you to freshly baked butter biscuits. You can shake hands and make peace." The young girl seemed to have a natural ability to calm people's restlessness. Asake and Isabel subconsciously looked at each other and frowned. Just now they had indeed lost control of their emotions, but now they had already calmed down. "I am sorry." Asake took a deep breath. "Me too, I shouldn't have scolded you." Isabel sighed. "It is just that I was too anxious. Especially now that I have to rely on you, it made my pride very uncomfortable. You know, I have always been very strong. All these years, I bullied you and Ludic because I wanted to prove that even if it is a woman, I will also." Something was wrong. Asake also sighed. "Not being able to pray has always been a thorn in my heart. Isabel, you, Ludic and I grew up together. I always thought that you all understood me and wouldn't bring this matter up. This really hurts me. This was not right. What did you do to me?" Two Isabel and Asake looked at the young girl carrying a small basket in front of them with a gloomy expression. The young girl was wearing a pure white dress. She had the kind of quality that could completely calm people down with just one look. There was an incredible magical power. "This is called the flower of truth." The young girl smiled and said, "As long as you smell it, you will say what is in your heart. You quarreled because you didn't express your inner thoughts properly. So, if you have anything to say, you must tell each other properly. What you said just now, were those your heartfelt words?" Two Asake and Isabel suddenly looked like they had seen a ghost. Bah! But at this time, the quarrel. Obviously, they couldn't quarrel anymore. The two only felt extremely uncomfortable at this time, and even had the impulse to never see each other again. This kind of flower called the flower of truth was too scary. It could actually make people say what was in their heart directly. What was worse was that the two of them now found that in the streets and alleys of the Ice King city, there were many places where this kind of strange flower was planted. No wonder, when they walked in the king's city, everywhere was peaceful. "Little girl, don't the people here know how to lie?" Asake covered his mouth and nose at this time and asked hesitantly. "Generally, if there is no situation, they won't lie." The young girl tilted her head and said, "But there are also lies. After a few days, Sister told me that some beautiful lies are also good. By the way, are you from outside? I don't think I've ever seen you before." Isabel said indifferently, "There are so many people in the king's city. Isn't it normal that you haven't seen us before? Don't tell me that you know everyone in the capital?" "Of course." The young girl blinked her eyes. "I can call out the names of everyone in the king's city, unless it's someone who came here for the first time. Big brother, big sister, what are your names?" Mr. Asake said indifferently at this time, "Isabel." Isabel coldly stared at this shameless guy and said with a smile, "I'm Asake's Na. Little sister, what's your name?" "Bai Shui." She said to wait and see and try not to disturb the development of the story. How could it be? Knowing it was one thing, but being able to do it was another thing altogether. Lady Nan turned into a black fog and directly passed through the big wall of the imperial palace. She secretly told herself that she would just take a look and then leave. She wouldn't do anything and didn't care about anything. As long as she had a plan in mind, it would be fine. Otherwise, what she could do would be too restricted. Carefully, try not to be discovered. She touched something. Lady Nan's body instantly tensed up. The moment she turned around, her arm turned into a black broadsword that was more than 10 meters long and was about to slash down. She saw a ray of holy light coming at her and colliding with the black broadsword, making a poochie sound. It's you. I knew it. 2-inch UF** king. Stop together. I'll count to 123. 2. While they were looking at each other, a huge suction force instantly sucked the two of them into the sky, and then they fell heavily. In the end, the two of them fell directly into a quiet courtyard. In the courtyard, a blonde girl in black clothes was holding a cup of black tea at this time. Long time no see, Lady Nan. The girl narrowed her eyes. And this is Metatron? Lady Nan immediately took a deep breath and didn't stand up. Instead, she directly lay flat on the ground and went offline. Madanzo also took a deep breath. Someone, bring me my logout key. No. Drinking tea, ahahaha, today's weather is so good. Drinking tea is good. Ahahaha. Chapter 23:17. In the courtyard full of vitality, there was no breath of winter at all. Butterflies were flying among the flowers. But Madanzo had no mood to enjoy the beautiful scenery. Nan Xiaonan was still pretending to be dead at her feet. It was as if she had fallen from the sky and fainted directly. She could sleep forever. She even raised her butt and lay face on the ground. No one would pretend to be dead without caring about her image. Ha! It's just Saint Joan of Arc. What's there to be afraid of? I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. Metatron? I'm here. In the pavilion, Miss Maid slowly put down the teacup and suddenly showed a smile. I'm sorry. I haven't seen you for so long, and I have to invite you here in this way. It doesn't matter. Madanzo gave a silly smile, but she didn't move half an inch, mainly because her legs were too weak to walk. Miss Maid's beautiful eyes looked back and forth between Nan Xiaonan and her at this time. She said thoughtfully, "It seems that you and Lady Nan have a very good journey. Lady Nan, do you need me to treat you?" "I'm fine." Madanzo couldn't help but be startled. Nan Xiaonan had stood up at some point. She even put her hands behind her back, slightly opened her legs, raised her head and puffed out her chest. Her voice was full of energy. "Don't stand there." Miss Maid chuckled at this time. "I made some afternoon snacks. Come and have some with me." "Okay?" Madanzo nodded subconsciously, and then looked at Nan Xiaonan, who was standing upright. Her hands behind her back were trembling. She also looked at Madanzo at this time, and her eyes were chatting. "Senior, friend of life and death." Madanzo took a deep breath and gave her a reassuring look. The bearded dwarfs were taking out food from the house and walking into the courtyard with strange eyes at this time, while looking at the two guests who suddenly appeared here. For the 7 bearded dwarves, the first princess had no friends. How could such an evil witch make friends? The wedding of the princes and princesses of the 2 countries was coming soon, but the eldest princess had not made any moves recently. Could it be that she was secretly planning something big, and these 2 guests were the key to it? The bearded dwarves did not know, nor did they dare to ask. After putting down the things, they respectfully retreated to the yard on the other side of the house to play in the snow. Miss Yu Yi, who are those people just now?" Nan Xiaonan stared suspiciously in the direction in which the dwarves had left. "Have you heard the story of Snow White?" Miss Maid asked calmly. The 2 of them quickly nodded. This was probably one of the most widely spread fairy tales, not just in a single subworld, but in almost the entire dimensional crevice. According to the statistics of the Kingdom of Heaven, among all the subworlds in which the Kingdom of Heaven had spread their faith, more than 97% of them had spread this fairy tale. Of course, this was rather boring cold knowledge. Could it be that these dwarves are? Madanzo could not help but open her mouth. They are the dwarves in the legend. Miss Maid smiled slightly and said, but here, they are the pawns of the first princess who committed all kinds of evil deeds. They have done a lot of bad things. Lady Nan, you seem to be very surprised. Don't you already know that I am the traitorous witch princess? Nan Xiaonan took a deep breath and said seriously, how can the Yu Yi I know have any bad intentions? There must be some misunderstanding, so after knowing this, I immediately came to Winter City to inquire about your whereabouts. It's great to see that you are fine. I, Nan Xiaonan, am loyal and righteous. Thank you for your concern, I'm fine. Miss Maid chuckled. Lady Nan, go to the house and change your clothes. Your clothes are a little dirty. Nan Xiaonan was startled, but immediately reacted. She knew that she was deliberately sent away. This Miss Maid might have something to talk to Madanzo alone. She put away her suspicions, and without the slightest bit of sloppiness, she immediately turned and walked into the big house. However, she was even more curious. Could it be that these two really have a very deep friendship? Metatron, it turns out that you are not dead yet. Miss Maid smiled and said, do you want me to kill you again? Madanzo, who had just reached her claws into the plate and wanted to grab a biscuit to taste, suddenly shivered when she heard this. This was really a life-and-death friendship. Madanzo couldn't help but smile bitterly. I look like a ghost now, no different from being dead. I heard that you have joined the shop. Why, are you interested in a lonely ghost like me? Miss Maid said indifferently, it's not up to me to decide whether I am interested in you or not. Madanzo was startled and frowned. You seem to be a little different. How am I different? Madanzo thought for a while and said, it seems that you have become more restrained. Of course, this may just be my illusion. Perhaps it's because we haven't seen each other for a long time, and many things have happened. Miss Maid was silent for a while, then slowly said, I haven't changed. This is the original me. Madanzo frowned and asked tentatively, you don't hate me? Miss Maid said expressionlessly, the status of a sage is more like a perfect shackle for me. Well, Madanzo lowered her head and pondered. After a while, she slowly raised her head and said softly, then I should congratulate you for letting go of all this. The Kingdom of Heaven will be destroyed, or it will be destroyed. Miss Maid then smiled. Isn't this even worse? Madanzo's face suddenly darkened. It sighed and said, I've already investigated the matter at that time. Although it's not the original intention of him, it's also under him's acquiescence. This kind of inaction is the biggest original sin. I don't oppose any revenge against him. But only those believers in the kingdom of holy light are innocent. After all, you were willing to sacrifice because you wanted to save them. I said that the status of a sage is a perfect shackle. Miss Maid said indifferently, now, in my opinion, even if there are 100 or 1,000 times more believers in the kingdom of heaven, it's not worth even a second of my time. Madanzo was stunned and looked at her in disbelief. She said subconsciously, Then what's worth it? Miss Maid's blue eyes were imprinted on Madanzo's body. She said softly, Metatron, my flag will only open for one person now. It's over, it's over, it's over. The worst thing happened. Madanzo took a deep breath. The village girl named Orniang that it knew had really become love-struck. This was the ultimate virus that had harmed countless career women in the dimensional crack. Together with the Chunibu disease, they were known as the two scourges of the void. A career woman with the love-struck brain couldn't listen to anything. Moreover, she would automatically imagine all the good things about her lover. Even if it was a pile of shit, it would smell good. No matter what bad things her lover had done, she would automatically correct them. Often, It would be accompanied by self-improvement, narcissism, self-satisfaction, self-touching symptoms, and so on. Well, do you still need a pendant for your flag? I also want to have a super career woman with a love-struck brain. As a partner. Miss Maid chuckled and said, Metatron, do you want to be one of the 10,000 souls of the strong on the flag of freedom? In that case, I'll be really flattered. Madanzo shook its head. Being cheeky had never worked on this woman. Too many stubborn little geniuses had tried it. This village girl named Orniang, to put it nicely, was persistent. To put it bluntly, she was actually a paranoid person with a personality defect. It sighed and said, Let's not talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. Joan of Arc, I saw Elohim. Maybe it's Elohim in the original world. Not only did Nan Xiaonan change into a new set of clothes, she even removed Yulia's disguise and returned to her original appearance. When she estimated that it was about time and walked out of the big house, she saw Madanzo and Miss Maid sitting in the courtyard in silence. It seemed that they had not continued to talk for some time. At this time, Madanzo slowly stood up. There was nothing unusual on its face. It was very calm, so calm that it seemed a little strange. It walked towards her with a hint of curiosity in its eyes. This is your original appearance? It's not as good as Yulia, but it's pretty good. Good luck. 8 points of beauty. You motherf asterisk cur. Lady Nan was about to argue with the other party, but Madanzo lowered its voice and said, I've pleaded for you. Don't worry. I still have some face. The witch of the academy in her child world suddenly showed a bright smile. Where are you going? Can't you see? Madanzo said directly, to avoid suspicion. Don't you understand? This is a separate interrogation. Do you understand? Didn't it say that it had pleaded for her? At the moment when Nan Xiaonan was in a daze, Madanzo had slipped directly into the big house. Lady Nan was stunned. She braced herself and walked to the pavilion in the courtyard in front of Miss Maid. Miss Maid smiled and said, I heard from Metatron that you have a good relationship with Zhu Zhu and you've been alone with Jay for a long time. Let me think about it, and… Z? I heard that you also learned the adult teaching material using Z as a reference. Well, what else? I've said it. I won't come to Winter King City even if I'm beaten to death. I'm wrong. At this moment, the demoness of his subworld's academies was crying miserably. She pinched her own ears and knelt on the ground with tears and snot running down her face. No matter who I am, young master forced me to do this, huh? It's all because I seduced the young master. Oh. I still have a chance? Lady Nan, really? Miss Maid chuckled softly. What did you do wrong? You're an excellent new employee. At your stage, there aren't many talents who can perform like this. Lady Nan raised her head in amazement. Miss Maid took out a handkerchief and gently wiped the tears on her face. This should be my job. Miss Maid sighed and said, but I also have my reasons for not being able to leave. It's great that Miss Nan can replace me and guard the images of Master. What's going on? Miss Maid, this is? Of course, I have to commend Lady Nan for your contribution. Miss Maid smiled like a real sister. So, I've decided to praise Miss Nan in the next Onyx Soul Commendation ceremony. I'll also give you an anonymous leave of absence for 100 years as a reward. Oh? Lady Nan couldn't help blinking and asked curiously, I know about the leave, but what does anonymous mean? Miss Maid said, because it's my private sponsorship, it won't go through the shop's public account. Well, it's probably equivalent to the anonymous bank cards in the human world. Then, doesn't that mean anyone can use it? Nan Xiaonan's hands suddenly trembled. Anyone can use it, anyone can rob it? Miss Maid smiled slightly. Lady Nan, are you not satisfied? Well, a 100-year leave is too little. Let's increase it to a 1,000-year leave. In this way, even some senior messengers will be tempted. Well, they will also be envious. But you must keep it well. After all, I can't control the private communication between the Black Soul messengers. Lady Nan swallowed her saliva subconsciously and said in a trembling voice, How do they communicate? Of course, it's the daily communication. Miss Maid squinted. We all work for the master, how can we kill each other? Everyone loves each other, just like a family. Miss Witch of the Subworld's academic school suddenly felt weak in her legs and fell to the ground. Commendation conference. Attendance was called on the spot. A huge reward. From now on, Nan Xiaonan, will be the biggest koi fish in the shop. Oh, Lady Nan, you're too happy. You're welcome. This is what you deserve. I'm looking forward to your future performance. Keep up the good work. Smile. Hey, newcomer, look at your red face. You must have gotten a lot of benefits. Don't thank me. In the living room of the big house, Madanzo picked up a piece of biscuit. Nan Xiaonan walked to the sofa without saying a word and knelt down directly. Madanzo blinked. Nan Xiaonan strangled her neck without saying a word and said expressionlessly, Madanzo, what kind of friend are you? We're really friends. Madanzo put on a painful mask and her face turned blue. I was almost killed by her several times. Don't you think our friendship is deep, damn you? Nan Xiaonan looked sad and laughed wildly. Madanzo, let's die together. In this way we're also friends. Madanzo. End of this chapter. Chapter 23:18. Basically, the things that needed to be confessed had been confessed. The rewards and punishments were also a foregone conclusion. Although she was not looking forward to the commendation ceremony in the future, she still had to live her life. Lady Nan was now a salted fish. She deeply understood the true meaning of the sentence, the end that you worked so hard to reach is just the starting point for others. Good Lord, when she and Madanzo worked hard to push the plot in the Page Worlds, Miss Maid had directly controlled the plot in the Winter World. The big outer god boss, Morgan, was directly destroyed. Now, she was just a tool wearing the Winter Queen's disguise. After leaving the manor, Nan Xiaonan understood only one intention from Miss Maid, to let the wedding go smoothly. So, what are we going to do now? Walking out of the manor, Lady Nan couldn't help but feel a little lost. Metatro put his hands behind his head and walked leisurely. Don't do anything. Joan of Arc is the kind of person who hates it when others interfere with what she wants to do. Simply put, she can order you around, but you can't criticize her at all. TSK, the dictator of the Holy Angel Army, the Queen of Flames, and so on. There are many such nicknames. These nicknames, I'm afraid you came up with them. That's why you were beaten to death several times? Nan Xiaonan squinted and asked curiously, Back then, how did the Kingdom of Heaven send you ye out? Madanzo said indifferently, The lease of the Kingdom of Heaven expired. The old man was embarrassed, so he slapped his thigh and a group of filial sons and grandsons rushed to send their heads to him. After arguing for a long time, there was no conclusion. In the end, someone proposed to draw lots. Then, she was unlucky and won the prize. Is it so childish? Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but widen her eyes. That was the heavenly roar, one of the giants of the dimensional rift. It was at the top of the pyramid of the mythological faction. Although Madanzo said it lightly, Lady Nan had already figured out its character. The more disdainful it was, the more it cared about it. Otherwise? Madanzo shrugged and said, Don't tell me you want the old man to personally send off the old man? Even God wants face, okay? Lady Nan shook her head. I still feel that it's too strange. Since the lease is about to expire, I don't believe that Heavenly State didn't make preparations early. That's right, Madanzo said expressionlessly. Every time a new lease term starts, it's already in preparation. You guys cut the leaks so easily, but how do you know the difficulties of being a leak? It wasn't easy for me to grow a little bit. I haven't even gotten used to it yet, and it's about to mature again. Nan Xiaonan shrugged. You still haven't told me why it's not enough. Madanzo said indifferently, I was killed. After I died, Holy Fall, appeared in the Holy Light Kingdom. One of the 7 capitals that was supposed to be under my name fell into a crisis because of a holy fall. The collapse of faith swept through the entire Holy Light Kingdom like a plague. In order to fix all this and not shake the foundation of the Holy Light Kingdom, I had to consume a lot of willpower. What happened next, you'll understand if you think with your knees. Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but ponder. Isn't there a traitor? Madanzo didn't say anything, but Nan Xiaonan saw a sneer on its face. It was supposed to be the end of the lease term of the Holy Light Kingdom, but Metatron died. Then, like a chain reaction, the second saint, Saint Joan of Arc, was sacrificed as well. This was equivalent to directly cutting off 2 generals of heavenly state, and all of this happened under Horus' nose. Things were a little complicated. She couldn't help but start to sort out what happened after entering the Holy Light Kingdom. The death of Metatron was the origin of everything. Following that, the Holy Light Kingdom spent a lot of willpower to fix it, and Miss May joining the shop could all be seen on the spot. But things were far from over. In order to cover up the fact that the higher-ups of heavenly state had to use a saint to repay the debt, a group of seraphim worked together to create a virtual saint position to replace the saint in the free city. As the carrier of the virtual saint position, it was an angel named Lily. However, this virtual saint, Lily, didn't seem to be satisfied with just being a substitute. She actually secretly colluded with the outer god, Okaragan, who had awakened in the Holy Light Kingdom. They faked the death of the saint and forced the seraphim to launch the resurrection ceremony on the day of suffering of the saint. Holy water was prepared for this resurrection ceremony. The purpose was to allow Okaragan to successfully steal the new saint position and start his revenge on heavenly state. Lily was behind all of this. She even gave the Book of Gaia to Kerrigan. The question was, why did Lily take a big detour, fake her own death, and then send Kerrigan to the saint position? Nan Xiaonan had experienced the horror of the Book of Gaia too much. She didn't think that a virtual saint created by a group of seraphim had enough ability to obtain the Book of Gaia. Nan Xiaonan made a question here. As for the Black Joan incident that happened in Domremy village in the painting world, it had little to do with Lily's plan. It was because the Archangel secretly planned to use the yearning of the saint's father to create another Jeanne d'Arc. But there was also a possibility. That was, Lily might have noticed the Archangel's arrangement. She, who was originally not satisfied with just being a puppet-like virtual saint, finally decided to become a traitor after learning about this matter. So, why did you die? Nan Xiaonan pointed the final source to Madanzo. If you didn't die, there wouldn't be so much trouble, right? Madanzo suddenly opened her mouth and pointed at herself. She said in disbelief, "So, even living and breathing is a sin? Is it so difficult for me? Then do you know who killed you?" Nan Xiaonan asked with her hands on her hips and her head lowered. Only Madanzo answered her with a wry smile. "Then how did you die?" Nan Xiaonan frowned. "That day I was sleeping." Madanzo thought for a while and said, "Then?" Nan Xiaonan held her breath for fear of missing any details. "And then I died," Yi Zichen said. Madanzo spread out her hands. "After waking up, my consciousness was already in the interlayer of the destiny system." "You deserved to die." Madanzo smiled bitterly and nodded. "You deserved to die. You don't have anyone to suspect?" Nan Xiaonan didn't give up and asked, "Maybe you think too much. Think simply, after you die, who is the biggest beneficiary? If I die, it must be the biggest loss of heaven. Who can benefit? Maybe the one who benefits is not someone inside heaven, but someone outside of heaven." Madanzo shook her head. "The Void Giants have already divided their territories. They haven't even finished exploring their own territories. How can they have the energy to do this? You have also walked in the void before. It's not like you don't know that it is far from reaching the limit of development. Have you conquered all the multiple subworlds? Have you broken through the deep space forbidden zone?" Nan Shannon thought for a while and said coldly. He should be omniscient and omnipotent in heaven, right? He didn't say anything. Madanzo's face turned cold. That old man has been pretending to be dead. Nan Shannon suddenly patted Madanzo's head and smiled. Don't think about it, I know a way to let people know the truth. What way? Madanzo was stunned. Find my boss. Lady Nan's eyes lit up. For the sake of our precious friendship, I can put in a few good words for you to my boss. Maybe I can even give you a discount. Then the results will be yours, right? Madanzo sneered. If I make a deal and you complete my list, how long can you take off? Nan Shannon was stunned. This guy is too familiar with Black Soul. But if Madanzo is really the 11th beginning, why didn't she mention this when she met with Miss Maid just now? As the Black Soul's chief manager, how can she not know who is the Black Soul envoy? Do you want to know my real identity? No. Nan Shannon responded and walked out quickly, because she saw Essex and Isabel on the way. Yulia, do you know who we met on the way? Snow White. Nan Shannon was surprised. Mr. Arthesis had already briefly explained what had happened. You might not believe it, but she really is a princess. And for a princess to travel without a single guard, those who don't know would think that she's just an ordinary little girl. What danger could Snow White be in? If there was any danger, it would be directly strangled in the initial stage. The entire chilly winter royal city was being watched by Miss Maid at this time. Why, you don't seem to be curious? Isabel couldn't help frowning. Nan Shannon had a headache. When she left the manor, Miss Maid clearly said that she shouldn't let these two know her existence. She always felt that Miss Maid's expression at that time was a face of disgust. Curious, how can I not be curious? Nan Shannon muttered, but this Snow White's wedding is imminent. Why didn't she stay in the palace to prepare? Why did she run out alone? Essex shook his head with a wry smile. She said that she was going out to buy ingredients for dinner. Isabel and I followed her all the way and found that this Snow White really knew everyone in the chilly winter royal city. What's incredible is that everyone here seems to like this princess from the bottom of their hearts. Not to mention danger, no one even approached her with even a little bit of malice. How should I say it? There is something very special about this princess. Special? Madanzo frowned slightly. Looking at her is like looking at the embodiment of everything beautiful. Mr. Essex smiled bitterly, the kind that will make people feel ashamed. How did you separate later? Nan Shannon asked directly. She wasn't curious about anything about Snow White. This was under the protection of Miss Maid. Even if it was a flying pig, she wasn't curious. After she finished shopping, she went back directly. Artha sighed. I feel like I've walked into a fairy tale world. Everything here is unbelievably simple. Do you have this feeling? Lady Nan shook her head. Let's go back to the hotel first. It's almost time to assemble. Manor. A girl in white quietly poked her head out from the pillar and quietly looked at the woman in black in the courtyard. She was very curious. Snow White. Since you are here, why don't you come over? The girl in white let out a silly laugh, stuck out her little tongue, lifted her skirt, and trotted into the pavilion. She liked this sister more and more. Didn't you say that you will stay in the palace with your mother these 2 days? Miss Maid asked with a smile. Why are you here again? Mother is very busy these days. I have looked for her several times, but she has no time to care about me. The girl said softly. The servants in the palace have been discussing the wedding these 2 days. I am a bit annoyed, so I ran out. Sister Huang, I will cook dinner for you tonight, okay? I have prepared the ingredients. Miss Maid said softly. You don't like this wedding? The girl leaned on the table, and her whole face seemed to be melting. It seems that I don't dislike it, but I don't reject it either. I always feel that it is a bit unreal. Sister, do you know, I don't even know what the prince of the country of spring looks like. He must be a very good person. Miss Maid said with a smile. How do you know? The girl asked curiously. Sister, have you seen the Prince of the Country of Spring? What does he look like? I heard that he is a very gentle person. Is it true? Of course. Miss Maid smiled and stroked the girl's cheek, saying softly, In this world, no one will be more gentle to you than him. Well. The girl was thoughtful, and immediately showed a distressed look. Sister, can I ask you for a favor? As long as I can do it. The girl's eyes brightened, and directly held Miss Maid's hands, saying expectantly, Sister, on the wedding day, can you come to be my bridesmaid? Miss Maid was stunned, which was rare. How should she put it? Even if she was the master's sister, even in this absurd plot, it was already her limit to allow this wedding to exist and go on. Only this, I'm afraid I can't. She shook her head and apologized. She didn't even intend to give a reason. Why? The girl showed a trace of disappointment. At this time, Miss Maid said indifferently, I don't want anyone to appear by my side as the best man. No matter what the situation is, I won't allow it. At this moment. If I'm the best man, can I? In the courtyard, a soft voice slowly sounded. Miss Maid couldn't help but turn around. In the courtyard, there was someone standing under the eaves. Chapter 23:19. As he stood there, the snow fairies seemed to have quieted down. The eyes of the little princess of chilly winter lit up. She was one of the lucky ones who could see the snow fairies hidden in the atmosphere. The fairies were like her guardians, always sending her all kinds of information. It was said that the Prince of the Country of Spring was also a person who could make the fairies in the atmosphere like. Although the little princess of chilly winter had never seen the Prince of the Country of Spring, just based on this point, she was already looking forward to it. It turned out that, other than herself, other than the Prince of the Country of Spring whom she had never met, there was another person who could make the fairies like him. Elder sister, who is he? The little princess came back to her senses and asked in a low voice. The man under the eaves was wearing a white fox mask at this time, making people even more curious about his identity. A person who is very important to me. She had never seen such a touching expression from this noble and mysterious elder sister of hers. In the eyes of the little princess, her elder sister's whole world seemed to have changed. Her elder sister was very good to her, gentle and meticulous, but at the same time, she made the fairies not dare to approach her. Those were the snow fairies, and the cold could not make them afraid. At this time, the fairies seemed to be cheering. The air was filled with joy, and the little princess could easily feel the arrival of spring. The low-hanging roses in the courtyard seemed to be fuller in an instant. Then, the little princess saw an unforgettable scene. Under the scorching sun of the ice day, her elder sister directly threw herself into the arms of the man wearing the fox mask. They whispered something, but the breeze could not reach them. The fairies who wanted to eavesdrop pricked up their ears, but they could only hear the sound of the wind. The little princess of chilly winter tilted her head. Her elder sister and the mysterious man walked towards her. Hello, Your Highness. Hello. The little princess subconsciously raised her head and instinctively said, Can I take off your mask? If you take it off, I will disappear, he said softly. The little princess's heart seemed to be filled with a huge sense of loss. She quickly waved her hand and said, I'm sorry, this is the first time we meet, and I made such an unreasonable request. You are the most important person to my elder sister. If you disappear, I will blame myself. Do you really want to see it? He whispered again. The little princess subconsciously glanced at her elder sister, who was standing quietly at the side, but her elder sister only had eyes for him. The little princess bit her lip and finally shook her head forcefully. Suddenly, a warm palm caressed the little princess's cheek. Her body trembled slightly as the warm palm covered her eyes. He held her hand with his other hand, and she quickly found the fox mask. Under his guidance, she hesitantly took off the mask. She couldn't see anything, and could only touch it with her fingers. What kind of face was that? Eyes, nose, bridge, lips. Time passed just like that. No one knew how fast or slow it was. When the little princess turned around, the radiance of the winter sun made it difficult for her to open her eyes. She only felt that her cheeks were a little hot. The man had already put the fox mask back on. "I'm sorry, I still have some matters to attend to. I'll head back to the palace first." At this moment, the little princess held her face in her hands and ran out of the courtyard as if she was escaping. She even forgot to take the basket containing the ingredient. "Master, aren't you afraid of scaring her?" It was Miss Servant Girl's voice. Boss Luo chuckled and said, "After all, she wrote so many mischievous thoughts, a little revenge is nothing. But this wedding—" Miss Servant Girl wanted to say something but stopped. Boss Luo opened his palm, and a golden page formed in his palm. He then sent it to Miss Servant Girl. Miss Servant Girl's blue eyes glanced at the page, but she chuckled and said, "I see. Have you found out anything about Kerrigan?" The boss sat down at this moment. Miss Servant Girl said, "Most of the promises should be found on Lily. If you are in a hurry to find it, Lily is currently in the last page of the book." Boss Luo shook his head. "That's the last stop, I'll do it myself. This is the rubbing of the Book of Gaia." As he spoke, the owner flipped his palm again, and a phantom diary with a few real pages was presented in front of the servant girl. He said again, "Take a look, where should this page be placed?" Miss Servant Girl heard that and began to turn the pages. Not only the real pages had records, but also the virtual pages had descriptions. This should be the complete rubbing of the Book of Gaia. She looked at it very slowly and very carefully. Unknowingly, the afterglow had appeared, and the snow-white courtyard was dyed orange-red. Miss Servant Girl suddenly put the page in her hand between two pages of the Book of Gaia. "It should be here. But why?" "You should be able to figure it out," Miss Servant Girl muttered. "This diary was written by two people, especially the last few pages, which will be more obvious. But who wrote it?" "If I'm not wrong," Boss Luo said indifferently, "it should be Famine." Miss Servant Girl narrowed her eyes at this time, and her voice was slightly cold. "The seed of Universal or Mother was actually used by Master, that's all in the past." Boss Luo shook his head. "I don't have a feeling of dislike in my heart. Of course, I don't like it. As for Famine, I've met it if I can. What I can still care about is the people I've met now, these things. You know, I'm beginning to feel that I'm actually created, an ideal state created by the Creator. Even the previous owner might have fallen into this trap unknowingly." Miss Servant Girl's face changed slightly. She would never allow anyone to plot against her master in any situation. Boss Luo stroked her lips and said, "Although I know these, it doesn't affect me now. The root is always higher than anything else. So, even if I know these, it doesn't cause any harm other than making me feel a little uncomfortable. I've seen the Emperor in the pages that recorded the Holy Land. I feel like I've seen a father who likes to play pranks, tell lame jokes, and try hard to show off in front of his children. As for me, now I'm just standing in a position that I've abandoned." "Master," Miss Servant Girl wanted to say something but stopped. Boss Luo pulled her into his arms and whispered, "And compared to these useless things, I'm more eager to stand by your side as a groomsman." The dusk in chilly winter city seemed to be longer than before. It was just that people would unconsciously be immersed in the afterglow of the sunset. It was infinitely beautiful. Who would care about it? There was too much time. Work. In the restaurant of the hotel, Mr. Asakes looked at Yulia with some surprise. The word work was too far away from him. He was the Rose Countess who had been lying flat for 15 years. It was impossible for him to work. "We have no money." Lady Nan shrugged and said, "I'm talking about the currency of this place. The money left by Grandpa Nicholas is only enough for me to buy a room for one night." Everyone looked at each other. They had never thought about the problem of money, but this seemed to be a real problem. This was a magic country. Almost everyone could use one or two small spells. Asakes and Isabel had seen it more than once when they were strolling in the capital in the afternoon. For example, the auntie who carried the child directly created an ice ladder to climb up. For example, the naughty child used ice and snow magic to create a snowman. No one dared to eat and dash here because the owner himself was a tyrant. It was said that he was a retired former royal mage. The whole street was filled with retired national mages and soldiers of the chilly winter army. Because of the existence of the century-old ice and snow storm, the former mages and soldiers who had retired early had no place to go, so they simply stayed in the capital to reproduce. Over time, it became the current capital where every family had some special skills. How are we going to find a job? Essex quickly accepted this uncomfortable fact. Lady Nan said, because of the wedding, the whole city needs to be decorated. At present, the palace is recruiting temporary workers for the decoration. I have already taken some forms. Everyone can fill them in. You can go to work tomorrow. Isabel took out a form and looked at it. She frowned and said, Dawn Winery? Not just anyone can answer the call. Miss Nan said unhurriedly, the palace will only accept people who have been recommended by others. This Dawn Winery supplies more than 70% of the wine in the entire chilly winter kingdom. It is an absolutely high-quality recommended unit. Miss Yulia, how did you get these? K.R. Lily asked in surprise. She and Senior Yulia recognized each other in the last page world. Until the current chilly winter page world, they had experienced 3 different page worlds together. Naturally, they were more familiar with each other. Lady Nan shrugged and said, It's nothing. I just found the owner of this winery and provided him with some modern wine-making technology in the Free City. The other party was immediately shocked and tried to curry favor with him. Essex couldn't help but be stunned and subconsciously said, What kind of third-rate transmigration plot is this? We are also transmigrating now. Lady Nan smiled slightly. Then wouldn't it be better for you to use your skills to pay back the money? Isabel said with a sneer. Lady Nan said indifferently, Money may not be able to buy identity. Fill in this form and we will be official employees of the Dawn Winery. With this identity, he would have a legitimate reason to stay in the royal city. Are there any other questions? No problem. Everyone, fill it up quickly. I have a question, Essex said sternly. Who can tell me why Mr. Allen hasn't returned yet? Allen, who claimed to be the victim who was unfortunately affected in the Holy Maiden ceremony and entered the Book of Gaia. After they split up, there was no more information. Don't worry, he is still in the capital. Lady Nan said indifferently, Don't worry about him for now. Why are you so sure? Isabel asked doubtfully. Yulia, is there something you haven't told us? Nan Xiaonan said indifferently, Teacher Isabel, I've experienced several different worlds, and I've also learned some things. I'm very different from the Yulia you taught me in the past. Isabel's frown deepened, but she did not ask further. After everyone took the form, they returned to their rooms. When Madame Zhou finally left, she suddenly asked Nan Xiaonan, Xing Chuang. Button. Nan Xiaonan nodded gently. How could she be at ease letting Mr. Allen act alone? Long before he left, this King Go of the Dimensional Rift had quietly tampered with the buttons of Mr. Allen's clothes. Night. When the shift was handed over, the soldier said hello and left his companions. He trotted to the side alley to solve the problem. The young man in front. In the dark alley, a hand reached out and waved at the soldier. Who? The soldier suddenly shuddered and subconsciously pulled out his long sword. He stared at the depths of the alley with rapt attention. The soldier was actually a little nervous. This was because the snowstorm was like a natural barrier. Although it trapped frigid winter, it also protected frigid winter at the same time. It wasn't a joke that frigid winter had no battles. The soldier also trained every day, but it was not to protect the country but as a job. In the entire Winter Kingdom, the most tense moment in hundreds of years was probably before the birth of the little princess, the horror brought by the treason of the eldest princess. But it was only once. Come out. The soldier shouted in a deep voice. I sprained my ankle. It's inconvenient for me to move. Can you come and help me? The soldier frowned, raised the oil lamp in his hand, and slowly approached. When he got closer, he saw a long-haired woman sitting on the ground, pinching her ankle with one hand. The woman had long hair and lowered her head, almost covering her face. Are you okay? The soldier lowered his guard. There was no war in winter, and the people of winter were simple. In this fairy-tale-like beautiful country, the soldier didn't think much. He quickly walked to the woman and reached out to help her up. He subconsciously looked at the woman's face, wanting to see her clearly. Thank you so much. The woman slowly raised her head. You're welcome. The soldier smiled slightly. But his smile froze at this moment. After the woman raised her head, what the soldier saw was a face exactly the same as his. You! A sharp pain spread in the soldier's chest. He was pushed directly to the wall and covered his mouth. He could only stare with his eyes wide open. Until he couldn't feel the pain. He could no longer feel the slightest bit of this world. Stanley, why were you gone for so long? His companion's voice came impatiently from outside. Sorry. I'll be right there. A soldier ran out hurriedly with his pants up. Perhaps because he ran too fast, his pants weren't fastened properly, and he fell directly to the ground. The soldiers on duty couldn't help but laugh. The soldier named Stanley scratched his head and stood up with a silly smile. This road is too slippery. Chapter 23:20. From today onwards it was time to work. Essex yawned, Isabel yawned, Lily yawned, Madanzo yawned, and Lady Nan yawned. The task they got from the wedding command center was to go to the central area and decorate the fountain. If the work is not completed within the specified time, there will be no food. Lily, come on. You are the best child. Don't worry, Mr. Essex, I will work hard for your share. This was the reason why Mr. Essex felt relieved after reaching his goal. He was a vampire. It was not suitable for him to work under the sun, so he just lay lazily in the shade under the tree. You don't have to spoil him. Isabel shook her head and said to Lily. The little maid in the mansion just smiled and said, in the past, Mr. Essex was also such a loser. When he helped in the mansion, the more he helped, the more troublesome it was. It was not as convenient as working alone. It was good now. It was like returning to that time. What happened over there? Isabel suddenly looked ahead. At this time, on the street not far away, a group of passers-by and some soldiers of the chilly winter kingdom gathered. The crowd of onlookers seemed to be getting more and more. Nan Xiaonan and Madanzo were already mixed in the crowd at this time. In the alley, a male body was found. Get out of the way. There's nothing to see. It's just a drunk, unlucky guy who froze to death. The soldiers were dispersing the crowd. Even so, the murder case still brought a lot of impact to this peaceful capital. Here, since the birth of the little princess more than 10 years ago, there had been no cases of unnatural death. People almost forgot that people could get drunk and freeze to death. What a joke. This was the capital of chilly winter. Even the brats grew up in ice and snow. People of chilly winter would freeze to death on the streets? Lady Nan and Madanzo were not the only ones who didn't believe it. The locals were also skeptical. This skepticism was because they were used to telling the truth. But this time, the soldier who dealt with the corpse was obviously lying. Or rather, he was deliberately hiding something. Otherwise, when the corpse was carried out, it shouldn't have been covered with a cloth. Instead, it should have been sent to a carriage with a canopy. The place where the corpses were transported and placed seemed to have been closed for a long time. There was only one person working there, an old man who was about to retire. After the body was sent to the morgue, there were only a few soldiers guarding it. As for how to deal with it, it still needed to be reported to the higher-up. The main thing was that things were not that simple. The deceased was obviously not drunk or frozen to death, but had been killed. This was probably a rather vile case of murder. The case was being sent to the palace at the fastest speed. Is there any sound inside? Is there? No, right? Aren't we guarding the door? That's right, in the morgue. Nan Xiaonan and Madanzo were frowning. The cloth covering the corpse had been lifted, and what they saw was a headless male corpse. A simple headless corpse would not make them frown. What made them feel strange was that the headless male corpse was wearing the clothes of Mr. Allen, who had been missing for a whole night. At this time, Nan Xiaonan silently tore off a button on her clothes, placed it in the palm of her hand, and said in a low voice, "Tell me, what happened?" She didn't care that Allen didn't come back for a whole night because she had secretly touched the buttons on his clothes. Therefore, she could always feel the existence of the buttons and knew that Allen had been in the capital all the time. But when she woke up in the morning, she found that the buttons had not been moved for a long time. She had been suspicious for a long time. An ordinary button, no matter how Xing Chuang was just a button. Besides, Nan Xiaonan didn't intend to let this button do anything earth-shattering. Therefore, Xing Chuang's method was simply to give it some intelligence, mainly used for recording. In fact, it was not much different from a tracker. The young man in front. Who? Come out. I sprained my ankle and it's inconvenient for me to move. Can you come over and help me? The undulating sound came from the button. This was the more useful information recorded by the button. The rest were basically the discussions of the soldiers when the bodies were transported. After listening to the retelling of the button, Nan Xiaonan and Madanzo looked at each other and quickly thought of the truth. The murderer was Allen, and he cut off the head of the deceased to confuse them. The key was that they didn't know the true identity of the headless body. Allen, why did you do this, to avoid us? Nan Xiaonan looked at Madanzo subconsciously. Where's your pipe? There was a headless murder case in the capital. The young boy once again held the pipe without tobacco in his mouth, and the smell came out immediately. There's only one truth. What is it? I don't know yet. You motherf *cur. Miss Nan punched him in the head without saying a word. Since they exposed each other's identities, Lady Nan became more and more unscrupulous towards this former clerk of the Kingdom of Heaven. Anyway, there was still Miss Maid above. Miss Maid was the kind of person who could only bully her people. Allen may have disguised as the original identity of the deceased. Otherwise, there's no need to cut off this person's head. Madanzo muttered. Nan Xiaonan also thought of this. She frowned and said, How to disguise? Don't be fooled by the size of the capital. The relationship between the people here is very good. As long as a stranger comes, the news will spread quickly. For example, their group of outlanders had already traveled several streets the next day. It can only be said that he has the means to not be discovered immediately. Madanzo muttered, The ability to disguise, transform, or something like that? Allen is just an ordinary person. Nan Xiaonan shook her head and said, He's not a vampire. Hasn't it been confirmed? What if it's an ability other than that of a vampire? Madanzo said, In the previous world, we started as ordinary people. Coming here, our abilities have basically recovered, right? You mean? Nan Xiaonan suddenly thought of a possibility. Sacred ability user? You know about sacred ability users? Madanzo asked curiously. Nan Xiaonan nodded and said, Before entering the Book of Gaia, I was investigating the case of the Holy Maiden candidate who lost her footing. I found an underground casino and found Norsta there. There, I met a sacred ability user. She said that the place she was born in was a sinful place where she was exiled, and that the blood of sinners flowed in her body. However, I still don't know how sacred ability users were born. Madanzo said slowly, The original residents of the Kingdom of Holy Light are actually believers who ascended from the subworlds to the Kingdom of Heaven. Only devout believers can stay there. Because they are collected from countless subworlds, it's easy to gather the relationships of these believers in the subworlds in the Kingdom of Holy Light. Therefore, you'll find that in the Kingdom of Holy Light, between father and son, mother and daughter, between brothers and sisters, it's easy to find their original form in some subworlds. If these believers are further cultivated in the kingdom of holy light, they will become petitioners, right? Nan Xiaonan said indifferently, further purifying the faith of believers, and thus cultivating true petitioners. The kingdom of heaven is really good at cultivating parasites. It's just SOSO. It's mainly to deal with a certain sickle used to cut leeks. Lady Nan rolled her eyes. So, what does this have to do with sacred ability users? Madanzo said, let's not talk about the operation of the outer gods for now. Let's talk about the growth path of ordinary believers. I've been in the interlayer of the destiny system for so long and actually discovered something. That is, the destiny system actually has a bug. Destiny system? Nan Xiaonan was shocked. I remember that the destiny system seems to be Miss Yi. She used to be the master designer. Madanzo was obviously someone who knew the inside story. But the development of a system and the creation of a system's ecological environment require the accumulation of time. In the later stages, it needs to be crazily patched to better adapt to the mutant data that constantly appears. So, because you lost Miss Yi, the destiny system can't be updated and patched. Madanzo shook her head and said, she's not the only one who can do this job. Don't think of the Seraphs as so useless. Their EQ is not high, but their intelligence is at least normal. Of course, because they took over the job, their understanding of the destiny system is not as thorough as the master designer. Moreover, when Joan of Arc drew the unlucky lot and was sold, she was somewhat dissatisfied. Therefore, before she left, a part of the core data of the system was not made public. What kind of data is it? Nan Xiaonan asked curiously. Madanzo smiled bitterly. It's the final authority to directly shut down the entire system. Don't think that your lady servant girl is no longer a member of the kingdom of heaven. In fact, the finances of the kingdom of heaven are still in her hands. That's right. This is indeed something that lady servant girl can do. Why are you all so miserable? Lady Nan complained. If I didn't take the blame for this, wouldn't I have died long ago? Madanzo sighed. Besides, although the Seraphs have low EQ, they are not useless. All these years, in order to break the technical blockade and take back the initiative, they have been resisting this final authority. They kept blocking and splitting, and even carried out multiple divisions and updates of the destiny system. After several such operations, the problem came. Bug. Madanzo nodded. To put it bluntly, it's the incompatibility between the original system and the pirated system. The current version of the destiny system is called Rain Wood Forest Wind, and it can no longer obtain support from the core. The continuous appearance of loopholes has led to a situation where some believers of the kingdom of holy light are unable to obtain wish power after praying. Then the so-called sinful bloodline, could it be? Madanzo shrugged and said mockingly, except for those outer gods who were cast in, there is no such thing as the sinful bloodline. If they were sinners, how could they ascend to heaven? That's really, Madanzo sighed. The destiny system can resonate with faith. But after the version of Rain Wood Forest Wind, there was a certain degree of mutation. It can not only resonate with faith, but also with negative emotions. After positive faith resonance, it is pure wish power. The resonance of negative emotions has mutated into various special abilities. In other words, the so-called sacred ability users. But under normal circumstances, the Palace of Blazing Heaven calls the mutated abilities evil. The saint powers were nothing more than the last shred of fantasy that the unfortunate exiled sinners had for themselves. They fantasize that they are not sinners, but a new evolution that is not recognized. Nothing, don't you want to eliminate these sacred ability users? Nan Xiaonan frowned. It should be possible to distinguish these sinners? As long as the current version of the system is inconvenient, the mutation will continue to exist. Even if the existing sacred ability users are cleaned up, there will still be new sacred ability users appearing. How can we get rid of them? Madanzo smiled bitterly. Besides, those bastards in the palace of blazing heaven are real angels, not murderous demons. They are the ones who caused the trouble, so how can they blame it on the innocent believers? They are also unwilling to give up on these sacred ability users, but they are trying their best to repair them. That's why they set up the sinful land and temporarily placed these sacred ability users there. It's similar to isolating them for treatment. It's just that after so many years, there hasn't been any effect. But the sacred ability users in the sinful land don't know about this. They only know one thing, and that is that the stronger the hatred, the stronger the ability. Nan Xiaonan frowned. If Alan is a sacred ability user, I'm afraid he can't get away from the whole thing. It's even possible that he can make Morgana and Lily side with them. No, I need to tell Lady Servant Girl about this immediately. Be quick. Madanzo nodded. Alan? In the courtyard of Dawn Winery, Lady Servant Girl, who was trimming the flowers, put down the scissors in her hand and frowned slightly. Nan Xiaonan nodded with a serious expression. I'm sorry, Lady Yuyi. I was too careless. I thought Alan was just an ordinary person, so, Lady Nan, I know about this. Lady Servant Girl replied indifferently. But you can't use your sacred ability here. Nan Xiaonan was stunned. Lady Servant Girl suddenly looked at Madanzo. Whether it's the power of will or the ability to mutate, they all need the destiny system to radiate to manifest. In the Book of Gaia, the destiny system can't radiate anything. Am I right, Metatron, the author of the first edition of Rain Wood Forest Wind? Ahahaha, today's weather is so good. These flowers are so beautiful. Today's clouds are also very white. What am I doing? I'm going to work. I don't know how to pay for today's meal. Ahahaha, goodbye. Seeing Madanzo fly out of the courtyard of the winery, Nan Xiaonan probably knew how Madanzo and Lady Servant Girl developed such a close friendship. If it were me, I would also beat her to death. Pirate dog. ######### PS1. I wish every third-year high school student who is reading this to win the college entrance examination. PS2. I heard that if you check in here, there's a 50% chance that your wish will come true. Chapter 23-21. Madanzo had escaped, but Lady Nan could not. She was still waiting for further instructions. She was now in a situation where Miss Maid was as steady as an old dog when she did not speak, but once Miss Maid gave a hint, she would act swiftly. Lady Nan, is there anything else? She had spoken, but what about the hint? Lady Nan, aren't you supposed to help decorate the fountain today? Miss Maid began to trim the flowers again. Yes, I'm on my way. Nan Xiaonan nodded. Miss Maid probably meant that she did not have to worry about this matter. But she did not leave immediately. Instead, she hesitated for a moment and said seriously, Miss Maid, I have something to ask you, is that okay? It's about Metatron, right? Miss Maid did not look up and said directly, It told you that it's the Black Soul Envoy, right? Nan Xiaonan nodded, so it can be, or it can be. It can be, or it can be. Miss Maid just left Dawn Manor with such an ambiguous answer. This directly made Lady Nan's attitude towards Madanzo even more subtle. But Miss Maid was obviously a perfectionist. Why did she give such an uncertain answer? Could it be that even she has not fully confirmed Madanzo's identity? Lady Nan could not help but have an inconceivable thought. This is impossible? Regardless of whether it was possible or not, she finally returned to the fountain in the square, intending to finish decorating the fountain, but Lady Nan, who had just returned, was dumbfounded at once. Asaix was still lying in the shade of the tree, while Isabel was eating snacks at an outdoor tea-house nearby, looking at the scenery. Madanzo should have come back earlier, and it was indeed here, but it was just feeding the hooligan cats and dogs. Only Lily was working seriously. Nan Xiaonan suddenly felt that this group of teammates was difficult to manage, so she simply sat beside Isabel and ordered a drink. If it were you now, I might vote for you. Isabel put down the drink and looked at her with a faint smile. Nan Xiaonan said calmly, Teacher Isabel, what are you talking about? This child, Yulia, has always been perfect. I can't find any major flaws in her. Isabel said softly, she's the best in every aspect. She's never made me worry. It's as if excellence is her attribute. But I don't know when it started, but Yulia is no longer a name, but a standard. Lady Nan muttered, Is this a compliment? Isabel shook her head. Yulia was taught by me, and I put a lot of effort into her lessons. So, who are you? I am Yulia. Nan Xiaonan smiled bitterly. Teacher Isabel, what's wrong with you? Isabel looked at her deeply. Then, can you continue to look like this until you become the real Yulia? This woman who likes both men and women. Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but feel a chill in her heart, but she didn't say anything. When did she realize? At first? Or was it because of the increased contact? They sat there in silence. Until Isabel took the initiative again. Is she okay? I'm fine. Lady Nan smiled slightly. At this time, a burst of noise broke the small atmosphere of the small conversation, only to see that there were people all around, and it seemed that the residents of the royal city were all heading in the same direction to the main street of the royal city. What happened? Don't you know? It's the diplomatic mission of the early spring country. The diplomatic mission of the early spring country? But isn't the prince of the country of early spring already here? This time, the diplomatic mission is to attend the wedding of the prince and the princess. Those who came are all the important people of the early spring country. The queen of the chilly winter country agreed to the prince's marriage proposal, but the condition was that the wedding must be held in the chilly winter royal city. This condition was sent to the early spring country as quickly as possible. Now, the arrival of the diplomatic mission of the early spring country obviously meant that they had agreed to this condition. The foreign affairs minister, who was in charge of receiving foreign guests, had already dressed up and waited. Soon, he welcomed the diplomatic mission of the early spring country to the guest house where the prince was staying. The standard was naturally the highest. Compared to this diplomatic mission, in addition to the dignitaries of the early spring country, there were also two very important people. They came as witnesses to the wedding, directly representing the king of the early spring country. His Royal Highness of the early spring country had been living in seclusion since he entered the chilly winter royal city. Even the foreign affairs minister of chilly winter could only see him once or twice in several visits. It was said that the prince's health was not good since he was a child, and he needed to rest for no reason. This is a sick person. After the little princess marries him, will her married life be happy? The foreign affairs minister thought worriedly at this time. The little princess was not only the child of the queen, but she was also the child of the entire chilly winter country. She came to this world with the blessing of the whole country, and everyone loved her from the bottom of their hearts. As the foreign affairs minister, if it weren't for the tense relationship between the two countries, if it weren't for the gap between the natural barrier and the ice storm once in 100 years, he wouldn't even be willing to take charge of this diplomatic work. No one wanted to give away their own daughter, right? This is Sir Gamma, the chief magician of the early spring country, and also the teacher of His Royal Highness. The envoy of the diplomatic mission introduced the background of the two important people at this time. The other is Legion Commander Renina. These two here will represent His Majesty the King of our country. The people who were introduced were all in their early 20s. They were quite young beauties, but their achievements were unusually astonishing. The Foreign Affairs Minister was startled. He could clearly sense the terrifying magic fluctuations in the body of the chief magician of the early spring country. The ice magic of the chilly winter country and the spring magic of the early spring country were two completely opposite forces, and the reaction between them was unusually sensitive. The magic of the Chief Gamma was so powerful that even compared to the chief of the chilly winter country, It was not to be outdone. No wonder he was able to ascend the throne of the chief magician of the early spring country at such a young age. As for the other young beauty, her expression was slightly gloomy, and naturally emitted a feeling that made people feel a chill down their backs, as if they were being stared at by a poisonous snake. Although Renina did not have as powerful magic as Gamma, her magic capacity could not be underestimated. In addition, her whole body was filled with murderous intent. The early spring was different from the chilly winter. Because of the existence of the ice storm, there had never been any war in the chilly winter country. But the early spring was a country that was at war everywhere. Although the name of the early spring was gentle, the people of this country were not gentle at all. In comparison, the chilly winter was more like a younger brother. These two probably represented not only the king of the early spring, but also the military force of the early spring. Lady Gamma, Lady Renina, it is nice to meet you both. Where is the prince? The foreign affairs minister who had planned to make friends with them was instantly interrupted, and he was stunned with an awkward expression. And the person who planned to talk to him at this time was the cold and gloomy General Renina. His Royal Highness seems to be not feeling well, so he is still recuperating in the guesthouse. The Foreign Affairs Minister of the chilly winter country smiled and said, "You two will see when you go in. Also, I have arranged for tonight, go in." The one who spoke was the other representative, the chief magician of the early spring country, Lady Gamma. She directly walked past the Foreign Affairs Minister at this time. Not giving face at all, the Foreign Affairs Minister of the chilly winter country opened his mouth and looked at the two young women who were already standing at the top of the early spring country. He could not help but feel angry. "Lady, please don't blame us." The emissary of the diplomatic group hurried forward at this time and said with a wry smile, "These two are more direct masters, and they have never liked complicated things. Moreover, the positions of these two are somewhat different." The Foreign Affairs Minister could not help but feel moved at this time. Could it be that they are actually? The emissary of the diplomatic group shook his head at this time. He walked closer and whispered to the Foreign Affairs Minister, "There are different voices about this wedding. However, I will try to make this wedding go smoothly." The Foreign Affairs Minister nodded knowingly. The attitude of the early spring towards the chilly winter country was quite contradictory. One side was in favor of war, and the other side was anti-war. This emissary of the diplomatic group was probably arranged by the anti-war faction. However, looking at the attitude of the chief magician and the general, I am afraid that the military force of the early spring country is in favor of war. Hopefully, the weak prince would be able to withstand the pressure from the two of them. The Foreign Affairs Minister could not help but look at the guesthouse with worry. The ice and snow spirits were flying in the courtyard, but what they released was not coldness, but a burst of coolness. In this city of ice and snow, the courtyard exuded the breath of spring. It was the beginning of spring, and the prince was leaning against the door frame. He was only wearing a thin robe, and the butterfly had stopped at his fingertip. It had been a long time. At the entrance of the courtyard, the guard Kaz, who was wearing heavy armor, stood still like a mountain. In the room, the magician Gamma and the general of the army, Reina, were sitting on the ground at this time. They had been sitting for a long time. His Highness suddenly coughed twice. Gamma frowned directly. "Your Highness, the environment of chilly winter is still too difficult for you. You'd better go back with me." His Highness smiled and said, "In fact, I am used to it. When I first came, I had to wear 2 more clothes." "Your Highness." The chief magician's voice sank. "Please don't make trouble." His Highness said softly, "Gamma, you have lost some weight, are you okay?" The chief magician's chest heaved up and down a few times, and he muttered, "Not good." The general of the army, Reina, who was sitting on the side, suddenly said with a blank expression, "These days when His Highness left, Gamma's people often got angry, and they often went to the barracks to find people to learn from. Recently, it has become worse, and they have dismissed 3 cooks in succession. In addition, they also beat the noble young masters of King's City from top to bottom. Rainy na. The chief magician's face was pale, and his voice was colder than the ice and snow in winter. Do you want to die? The general of the army said indifferently, I don't want to die. Similarly, I don't want my soldiers to come to me every day and cry. So the best solution is, Your Highness, when will you return home? You haven't accompanied me to fish for a long time. I will go back. His Highness thought for a while and said, with my wife. The chief magician and the general of the army looked at each other. Reyna said calmly, Your Highness, the first legion under my command has been assembled. I am confident that I can behead the Queen of Cold Winter within a day. Gamma also said expressionlessly, The magician brigade of the palace can blow up the capital in half a day. Without the ice and snow storm barrier, Cold Winter is just a little brother. His Highness smiled bitterly and said helplessly, I am here to marry. The chief magician said righteously, The shame of the early spring can only be repaid with the blood of Cold Winter. As the crown prince of the early spring, you can't forget this blood feud. The general of the army also nodded at the moment. Give me a day, after flattening Cold Winter, you go back and accompany me to fish. Can you always think about fishing? The chief magician slapped the back of Reyna's head directly. The general of the army said indifferently, Because fishing can sit in the arms of His Highness the Prince. What? The chief magician of the early spring suddenly stood up and said in disbelief and inexplicable annoyance, How come I didn't know there was such a thing? That's because this big-breasted but brainless girl only wears low-cut clothes at night to urge His Highness to study. Reyna sneered. These two will probably last for a long time. His Highness the Prince of the early spring couldn't help but smile. In fact, their relationship was very good. After all, they grew up together. This was the person who was arranged to guard his road from the crown prince to the king. His Highness the Prince quietly walked into the courtyard. The ice and snow spirits were still flying around him. At the entrance of the courtyard, Kaz's imposing figure was still motionless. He didn't find it strange, and even didn't bother to pay attention to it. His Highness the Prince suddenly wrapped his clothes around his body and muttered to himself, I still feel a little cold, will I see her again? That happened on the night when he first came to the Cold Winter Kingdom. Here there came an assassin. Even Kaz, one of the strongest warriors in the kingdom, couldn't deal with the terrible assassin. She was dressed in black, but shone like the bright moon. From that moment on, His Highness the Prince couldn't forget that figure. The leaves fell, and His Highness the Prince couldn't help but cough a few times. The ice and snow spirits seemed to be frightened and directly scattered in the air in an instant. His Highness the Prince was slightly absent-minded, but he saw a reflection of a figure in the fish pond in the courtyard. He subconsciously looked over. On the other side of the fish pond, there was a man wearing a fox mask, looking at him at this moment. End of this chapter.